if you want the community to be better, you go work to get it so. Me winning an election ain't gonna transform the Virgin Islands to a positive place. Me working hard alone ain't gonna transform the Virgin Islands to a better place. Each one of us have to put our sweat and tears at the grindstone to improve this community, to create the opportunities, to create the healthcare system and the education system that the Virgin Islanders coming behind will do better and have better than our generation is having.
Just need a big bag, a big bag. I'ma get it so fast, I'm so fast. And when I get that money, I'ma make that last. Caribbean currency, we make that money last. We make it last. I just need a big bag, a big bag. I'ma get it fast, get it fast, get it fast. I just need a big bag, big bag. I just need a big bag, big bag.
Welcome to another episode of Caribbean Currency, where Caribbean culture meets financial literacy. I am your co-host, Kyle. I'm here with my co-host, Redman. And today, we have a special prestige guest, another son of the soil, former Lieutenant Governor of the United States Virgin Islands, and former 8th elected governor of the United States Virgin Islands, hailing from Santa Cruz, St. Croix, none other than Mr. 105 pounds lighter, by the way, Mr. Kenneth Mapp.
Good day.
Man, I'm so happy to have you, sir.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for
Governor,
inviting
pardon
me.
me before we go on.
Oh,
we
God.
do this
I love
every
you,
episode.
Sony, I love
Don't
you.
forget Sony
Sony, I
and
love
the
you.
ones and twos.
You don't really love
And
me.
Cody
I love-
behind the
Forget me
I love you,
every
Sony.
He bought
time.
8 episodes and he keep forgetting. You know what I mean?
And that's
So I
what
gotta
you
make
here.
sure.
That's what you here for.
Right.
You check to pull up my
Big
slack.
up Sony and Cody and the ones and twos.
What's
For
up,
sure.
guys?
Okay.
But yes, Honorable Governor Mapp is in the house. He's here. He's looking amazing, looking healthy.
Thank you.
And again, sir, I know you're
Stress-free.
Stress-free.
Very stress-free.
Yeah.
Stress-free.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you, man, for taking time out of your busy schedule to just grace us with your presence and just being here and just, letting the people hear from you,
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. And when you said a podcast, I didn't expect to walk into such a high-level professional studio.
Yes,
It
thank you.
reminds me when I on the mainland and I'm doing my work as governor and they
Yes.
invite me into a studio. I mean, you guys are top of the line.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
And I like top of the line.
The linens, the sheets.
Well, they weren't really top of the line. But if that's what they consider top of the line.
Right.
God bless them,
Right. Right.
Yes.
Hey, Like, I'm asking about Eugene, your former chief of
Yes.
staff. I knew him for a very long time. And I've been on
He's running for the Senate now.
He's running for the Senate now. He sent me everything he needed to send me. I really like him. Like, we talk politics a lot. So when I got to know him while he was a chief of staff, when he was running, I've been running him down for an interview with you
Oh, really?
from then.
Okay.
But I'm happy I got it now because now, our linen right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Back then, my linen wasn't right. It was a phone, camera, and live.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it all work out
Yes.
to happen at this perfect time. So I'm absolutely happy that you're here. I've always wanted to have a conversation with you about yourself and about politics and needless to say, many more things.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm really happy, and I'm actually honored, very honored to be here and be in your presence. And I am an open book. I have my oldest nephew is a professor, and he's actually working with me to get a book of my. They call it your memoirs.
Yeah.
I actually plan to tell some secret and tell some melody that people didn't know.
Yes, sir.
Over
In
the
true
years.
Crucian fashion.
Yeah. If you're a crucial and you know the truth, you'll make it up as you go along.
Exactly.
In reality, about political advocacy and some of the experiences I've had and with different people in the Virgin Islands that influenced my life tremendously and didn't influence my life and I thought were kind of ridiculous, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's the whole story of my career, and I want to share some of that with the folks back home.
So being born in New York and then coming to St. Croix as a younger child, did you have to deal with like the you ain't really from here, you're from New York type of thing
Well,
back then in them days?
At in 1960, I was the third and final. I was the third and last child of my mom and dad at that moment. And my mom had got married in 1950, and I was born in 55, and by 57, 58, as the story is told, my dad would come home when he want, and sometimes don't come home.
Right.
And when my mom would get paid,
And he's a Crucian?
No. He's a New Yorker from Barbados.
Okay.
And he would show up and, to get some of the paycheck and stuff. And my mom just made a decision that she had, at that time, 3 boys to raise. And she didn't have time for the foolishness. And although we lived in the project, my mom changed the lock on the door, locked my father out.
Right.
Telling him, you go back to your parents' house. And decided she was going to go to school and work full time. So she wanted us to be raised in the Virgin Islands and go to school there, because in those early days in Brooklyn, drugs were becoming very widespread, and people, you get involved in gangs and all of that.
Right.
So I was very talkative as a little boy, again, as the story is told. And so she decided I should go first.
Right.
And when they told me I was going on a plane ride, I thought you would sit on the wing.
Yeah.
Plane them goodbye, that's how they look.
Yeah.
And I was glad to go with my grandmother and another younger cousin. And when I got to St. Croix, we went Panam to Puerto Rico, and then Caribbean from Puerto Rico to St. Croix. And when they opened the door and I see what St. Croix kind of looked like, I was going on either 5 or 6. I was going on 5. I just started to bawl because, and I didn't think it was. And when we got to my grandparents were farmers. So when we arrived there were like 3 or 4 buildings, but there were duck, goat, sheep, pig, chicken, running all around the place. And I was like,
This ain't it.
And I remember wanting to go to the bathroom, and I searched the house high and low. I couldn't find the bathroom. So I asked. I had never had to ask
With a
go to
bathroom.
And when I asked, they asked me, what you going to do?
So it depends on what bathroom.
And I was like, and then when it was like nighttime, and when I tell them I got number 2, they start teasing me. Because we raised the tease you, like you come out. They raised me, as a child, you have to be, respectful as well. And I say, I got number 2, and they start saying, the boy could count. Anyway, when they decide I had to go outside, I didn't want to go. And literally, I think 3 or 4 days later, my grandmother, I was reminded that to buy half a bottle of castor oil to get me to go, because it was, I did not know, and I used to say this as a young child, I didn't know what we did to our mother, that she had sent us to what at that time as a child I thought was a God-forsaken place. There was no running water. The light was consisted of a bulb and a wire. You had to get up early in the morning and take care of all these animals, and then you bathe in a wash pan in the yard. You go help wash your own clothes. They were on washing machine. They were not TV, not telephone. None of that. 3 of we sleep in one bed. And we beg our mother to bring us back to New York, and she was like, no. And then finally we got in a lot of fights in school because, like you said, every time we open our mouth to talk, well, who these people there? We yanking, and we half the time we don't understand what they're saying. And we grew up with a lot of cousins, because my aunts and uncles, they have their own homes in the same estate. So all the little children have to play together and everything, and they run around barefooted and so on. Like, finally, our grandmother tell our mother, you need to come and get them, because this ain't working. They're fighting. They go to church. They're fighting. So our mother came to St. Croix and sit we down and tell us why. And then we were like, we don't care. We want to go back. By the time my other 2 brothers came, and then finally she said, I want to make a deal with you. This is how our mother and grandparents were. I'll make a deal with you. You stay here and you go to school, and you do well in school. Every year when school is over, the next day you could get on the plane and come to New York, and you don't have to go back to St. Croix until the day before school starts. And she put me on a roll overnight. We just won that plane ride. And all of us, we graduate. I was out of St. Croix, I think 4 days after graduation. I just couldn't wait to go. And 3.5 years later, I was back in St. Croix. I thought the people in New York were crazy. They had no idea what life was like. I was in the New York Police Department. And I met people who came from families with money and had cars and education. but they had no brains.
Yeah.
And the crazy things they used to do and the things they used to say. And that's not talking about the violence, because I worked in the 83rd precinct in Bushwick. There was a lot of violence and overdosing and all of that.
Are you struggling with having bad credit? Is having a bad credit score affecting your ability to get approved for the things you need in life? Well, guess what? I could help you out. I could get all those negative items removed if we're talking about inquiries, late payments, collections, charge-offs, repossessions, even bankruptcies. We could get those removed from your credit report. Go on www.credible-source.com and fill out an inquiry right now so we could get you to a better credit score so you could get approved for the things you need in life. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
But the people that I worked around, some of them were like out of their minds. And so New York had a financial problem. And when I met this sergeant that came up, his sister was marrying my cousin. And I met him. He was a sergeant. He was saying, but why you don't come back to St. Croix? We're trying to modernize the police department. And anyway, I took him up on an invitation on a vacation. I went down and I saw Hess had just built a new headquarters and they were getting modern police cars. So I said, I think I could do this. And I came back home. My brothers were back home, I think 3 or 4 or 5 years later. And I realized as an adult that my mother was my grandmother as well, who didn't really have any formal education. These were brilliant people. My grandmother's family is from Joseph Van Dyke. My grandmother was born in St. Thomas. And these were brilliant people because they put a value system in us and they raise us with a work ethic that anything you want to do in life, anything you want to become, anything you want to achieve, is nobody in the world could stop you. And you don't let people decide who you are. And as long as you're respectful to people and they're respectful to you, then you're fine. When people disrespect you, you got to decide whether you put in the pork chop on your plate or they put in the pork chop. If they put in the pork chop, then you go take what they give you. When you put in the pork chop, you don't have to accept no disrespect and nonsense from nobody in the world. And that's how we raised. And I am one of my grandmothers, my mother's mother. I am one of 71 grandchildren. And I know all my cousins because we were raised to know who our family was. You know, when we go to New York, we have to sleep at this aunt house and sleep in that uncle house. And we had our favorites, but we had to know who our family was. And I dare say the majority, over 95% of my generation, all are successful professionals, and their children are professional from such a huge clan. But because of the way the old lady was and the way that we were raised in church and to understand values and integrity. And, you know, there comes a point in life when you're speaking to people or they tell you, and, you know, my career was controversial. And when people say certain things to me or try to demean me, whether I'm in the VI or on the mainland, I find myself responding, and once or twice I would stop and say, oh my goodness, I've just become my grandmother. I got something that come right out her mouth, you know? So the Virgin Islands turned out to be a blessed for us, a blessing story for us. And my brothers who have children all born on the mainland and predominantly live on the mainland, when you look at them and you look at them caring for the children, you could see that value system, how it's permeated through the bloodline of the family, because that's just how the old people were, our elders were.
Definitely.
So you returned to the Virgin Islands to work in the police department. How was policing then? Was it leisurely? Was it, you know?
I had been in NYPD like 3.5 years before I returned. I was going to school
around what year this was?
I graduated from high school in 1973. And by November 73, I was in the New York City Police Academy. And I graduated in May 74 and was assigned to the 83rd Precinct. And I didn't go back to the Virgin Islands until 1977. So, and I was a trainee. And then when you become 21, you go back and you do your firearms training and some alternate training for like 4 weeks. And then you graduate with your badge and you're gone. And there's the badge I'm gone. I couldn't wait to get. But then New York had this serious financial problem. So they freeze everything. You just stay in the position you're in, and then when the money opened. So when I made 21, I couldn't get back to the academy. I have to wait. I didn't mind doing the police training stuff because you still working your shifts and you're working on the street. But then when VIPD was recruiting, and I went back and I actually saw the big difference in what they were doing in modernizing the department, I said, I could do this. And, you know, you don't know where your life the opportunities that come before you, you seize on them, and then your life takes a different turn. I have to admit that all my young life, I had one standing goal. I wanted to get my bachelor's degree and go to law school and to become an attorney. Because from a child, I like to argue and debate. And I know I could make some good money, in that field. I just like the law. But life had it that wasn't going to be. Yeah. So when your question, when I got there, it was different. It wasn't anything like the procedures and the processes in NYPD. And so sometimes I would say, you could get arrested doing that, because they were policing how they were policing. Right. And they were corrupt, but, it wasn't in those days. You could say it wasn't hard when they ask you could say a question and you answer back and you pick up a cuff. Yeah. So or they capoon you over a desk or something like that. Hey, even a traffic accident. When they need a tow truck, they would tell the dispatcher we need a tow truck, and the dispatch will call one. And I said, you can't do that because in NYPD, the person who they accident, you go find the tow truck, because, in those days in NYPD, they used to get gaff under the table and stuff. So they had prohibit that. So I said, no, we ain't into all of that, But it was different. And I actually ended up in the juvenile bureau.
Okay. Do you think even though you learned what you learned in the NYPD, do you think the way that the locals were policing each other in hindsight were just par for the course? It wasn't really wrong, since it's a smaller place and more intimate?
It wasn't wrong. In actuality, what that style of policing actually 20 years later became known as community policing, because in the Virgin Islands, everybody knew everybody and knew the family. So even in the juvenile bureau, when you had a case, I want to sit down and I type out a report and I got Anita Christian. No, we don't do all of that. Yeah. We're going to talk to the parents, right? And sometimes when, a lot of times kids were from single mothers raising the kids. And the mother would say, well, I just can't handle this child and he's just getting out the hand. So Anita said, really? I'll deal with it. And when Anita take them back to the police station, and when she bring them back, the mother ain't got no more problem with them. Yeah. So it was really, it was a lot of community policing. You went to families and people that you knew, that you saw, that you went to church with, or you were in school with their children, So it was much more familiar. Right. Not so much that it was wrong. And we didn't have a lot of the issues that the big cities were experiencing with the massive drugs and the gangs and the shooting. When you go to a bar, it was fisticuff. Somebody said something they weren't supposed to say, and they get knocked over the table, or it's just, this is life. Sometimes the guys got to the house of the ill repute and the girl light Benson and Hedges, and when the cigarette done, you got it done. Yeah. And sometimes they get fighting there, and they send you gotta go in and deal with the problem. But people want shooting and stabbing and that type of thing. Okay. In
the house of ill repute.
Yeah.
That's you say that in bars. Yeah, you go say that. Yeah. That way you sound professional, You don't say the other one, because then they're gonna be like, what you doing on there? Yeah.
I want to ask, because you said you had returned to the Virgin Islands to work with the police department. I know he was part of the juvenile department. That was what, like the late 70s, early 80s?
I got back to the VI in 77. Okay. They actually had recruit me. And then when I come home, they couldn't get the paperwork straight. The class was delayed. I said, but you make me lose a job. And so they said, no. We started a new program called School Managers. It paying a little less, but we're going to put you in that program. And as soon as the police academy ready, we'll move you over. And I think I started this school manager like August, September. And by January, they were ready to start the police class. So I was over in that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but I was just asking because we recently did an interview with a gentleman, Shabazz. And from what he was saying, during that time, like the late 70s, the early 80s, it was almost like it was the police against the people, right? Like the people talked about, the police brutality against them. And I just wanted to know, like, when you made that migration from New York to VIPD, did you see a lot of that? Like, did you see corruption? Like, did you see
the bad man police?
Right, the bad man police.
And Carl Road and stuff
Because
like that.
that's during
what
the
he
same
spoke about.
era, that you know type of stuff was happening.
And I wouldn't say that his perspective was wrong. I would say I saw from a different perspective. I didn't see a lot of corruption. I saw, as I said, in those days when you bring a suspect in and they're questioning a suspect, or there's somebody who they know involved in a lot of criminal activity all the time. They want this, like when you look at 48 hours and the person said, well, I don't want to answer any question. I'm a lawyer. And I watched that and I smiled because I would just see the person go over the back of the chair. They didn't have that kind of thing in those days. Or they take you to the, sometimes an officer, and I'm not saying they were correct.
Yes.
I want to be very clear. They would take somebody up to the beach and ask them if they could swim. And they said, well, if you want to stay on land, you're going to answer these questions, or you're going in the water. And that's how they did policing. I wouldn't say that it was the police against the community.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people in the community felt that the police was against them.
Mm-hmm.
I actually would say that I was in 10th grade when they had the Fountain Valley incident.
Mm-hmm.
There was really a difference in how policing had changed. Because at that point, they had you never saw murder and death like that.
Right.
And that was in the early 70s. So it shook everybody up.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, so I would say it started to change differently, but we weren't even yet in New York. It wasn't unusual for people to call you a pig.
Right.
But that wasn't, when I got back to St. Croix in the late 70s, they weren't even doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big thing for disrespect. You could come into a place and speak, and people would get up and walk out because they know what they were doing, they weren't supposed to do. And then you had younger folks who would challenge officers.
Yeah.
I mean, they were ready to fight and whatever. But I wouldn't say it was then. At that time, I wouldn't say it had become a us versus them in terms of the community.
So we would say that the aggression that the previous interview spoke on before, from the police perspective, is like, wow, Fountain Valley 5 happened. This is brazen. We never experienced this type of brazen. So maybe they had like an overreaction. Like, okay, like, I don't say an overreaction, but they felt like if we want to address these type of people, then we have to be these type of people.
And people had become younger people had become more independent and emboldened. So they didn't see the police with fear. They were prepared to challenge the police officers.
Yeah.
And I would say to some degree of not sophisticated training, the police would respond with brawn.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, how dare you? 'Cause when they were young, they
couldn't
couldn't
do
speak
that.
to police officers and adults
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
So the police would respond in a very negative way as well. So I think that's the time when you saw that curve beginning, that whole process changing. And then we start seeing like a lot of younger people in teenage years moving from petty crime to more violent crime.
Yeah.
We didn't have, there wasn't a time in the Virgin Islands when 15 and 16-year-olds were walking around with guns and breaking in people's house or raping people or even beginning to shoot people. But in this late 70s going and particularly into the 80s, we saw a lot more of that.
Right.
So it really, that was really a change happening in the society.
Right. Okay. So
And I ain't claiming that the police was all right.
Right.
Clearly from my comments. I ain't not saying
Yeah.
that.
No, obviously. I mean, even today, they're not all right today. They're not all bad today. You know what I mean? There's outliers, there's personal incidents. But in all, you still need a police force. You know what I mean?
Right.
Good, bad, indifferent. Our job as a society is to try to move things forward. So if you
And I think that's why when I became governor, and obviously I have an affinity for the police profession and police officers. That's why, as governor, I made a personal trek to the NYPD, having been there, and really got the NYPD to adopt the Virgin Islands Police Department sort of as a big brother. And I was a little bit surprised of some of the resistance, particularly even with some members of the legislature telling me, oh, you just want NYPD to be here because you've been, you were one of them. And that was not the point. But you can't argue with the sophistication and the benefit of modern day policing and the tools. Yeah. And so I wanted to impart that into the bloodline of the Virgin Islands Police Department because it makes the community safer. And it makes the police officer more confident in terms of how they're performing because they actually learn a lot of the different levels. And I'm not saying the Virgin Islands Police Department were undertrained at all, but they certainly didn't have the resources, do not have the resources, and didn't have the exposure of the training that done in a place like New York City Police Department, which is a catalyst partner to the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. When you graduate from the New York City Police Academy, you have 9 accredited, matriculated credits at John Jay College. So because of the way that curriculum is all set up, and I think it was 11 officers, either 9 to 11 officers from St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. The younger officers who had within the first year, we actually sent them to New York, and they stayed for 6 months doing that entire NYPD training and that whole exposure, and they were the better for it.
So question, so with that same Big Brother program, were any of the senior ranking officers, did they get the extension to go? And
The plan was to bring them down and to send some up because they wouldn't need that beginning training, but the supervisory training, that was really part of the plan going into the second term.
Like a student exchange.
I'm sorry?
Like a student exchange.
It's like a student exchange. And then we've put in a $15 million system in the criminal justice process in the Virgin Islands called the RAM system, which is it's a record management system. It's a highly computerized system. But what it does is it ties all of the data together, and you can do a lot of crime analysis. It gives the officers in the car real-time information. They don't have to have somebody walking 8 to 5 to get real-time information. We were going to do light up intersections with cameras and be able to do facial recognition and license plate recognition, because when people commit crimes, they flee. They're not worried about cameras and stuff like that. And so we spent that money to put all of that foundation and system to move the whole law enforcement community and the protection of the people of the Virgin Islands to the next level. Because at the end of the day, you being a police officer and waiting for a 911 call to go fill out a report and then try to find out who committed the crime doesn't change what the victim experienced or the death of the victim. Real policing and authenticated policing is preventing incidences, preventing crime, and preventing people from becoming victims of crime. And there's a science to that. There's no zero-based crime activity. But the key is you gotta be on your game, and you've got to be able to change with the times. And data and information is the key to dealing with protecting communities. And that's what we really, Delroy Richards, who was my police commissioner, that's what we really was after. And I met Delroy when I joined the NYPD, and he was a sergeant or lieutenant, and everybody knew he grew, went to school and grew to become the chief of police, and then ended up running his own private sector security firm when he retired. And I was able to convince him to come back and be the police commissioner. And on some of the things that we wanted to do, sometimes he would say, but, Governor, I understand that, but, we got to make sure that the folks on the ground is ready to embrace this change. And you move in fast. I say, yeah, but I only got 4 years to start, so I got to, I got to get it done. But I have a lot of promise for the folks that do law enforcement in the Virgin Islands and do law enforcement elsewhere, because it is not an easy job by no stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, 'cause I was talking to one of my friends on the phone the other day, and her sister is a police, and I was like, I think I want to be a bad man police, because, cause things going to change. 7 days, that's going to be when I become commissioner. 7 days, I promise you. You know what I mean? Cause policing is hard, especially when you got a family, and you got, I was telling her, like, imagine pulling over a car that's heavily tinted, and you just don't know what behind that thing, and then you got to walk all the way up to that car, and then find out
what's going on
afterwards, right? So my gun in my hand. And she was like, no, you're going to go internal revenue. I said, okay, well, tell them come, but my gun in my hand and tell them find out what. So I know, you don't have to be a police officer to imagine everything that's going to go through your mind when you're doing your job the right way, and it still go wrong.
And the most dangerous incident that police officers to this day still
traffic stops
is domestic violence events, because you can pull up on a couple, whether they're married or they're significant others or whatever, and they fighting and gun knife and gun in the hand, and then you jump on one, the other one gonna jump on you because that you ain't got no business. And that's a lot of officers actually get killed like that. I think I saw on the news here this morning. There's a funeral today for a deputy who responded to a domestic violence case last Saturday and lost his life in the middle of it. So it's still you just there's so much unknowns. But at the end of the day, you have to call the police when you have those kinds of situations.
So from policing, you starting your career in policing. When did it shift for you to get out of the police force and do something different?
I don't know that I don't know that it shift. I think I had to catch up with it because I had become the security agent for Governor Wang Louis.
Okay.
To the Juvenile Bureau. I met Governor Louis in his campaign because I was raised. My grandfather, who died 5 years before me, loved to host candidates and go out in the community and make speeches. And I like I said, he died 5 years before I was born, but that's the story I'm told, and the people in the community knew him. And so I got involved in Governor Louis' campaign, and when it was election time, he needed additional security. So they invited me to join the squad, and he won. And then he said, well, I need to my family now is starting, and I'm going to have a bigger presence in St. Croix. So I need to set up security in St. Croix. Would you like to join the team? Well, I don't think he had finished asking the question before I said yes. So that's how I ended up in Government House. And the police union at the time was like the police department. It was sort of trotting along. And so one of the younger officers was running for president and asked me if I would join his slate as a board member. And I didn't think it would have been a big thing. And I said, sure, no problem. A board member, you meet once every 3 months or something. Me, I don't really work to do. Right? And he ended up getting a massive heart attack and dying. Oh, man. Young guy, 3 kids.
Well, you laugh around with you, man.
It's embarrassing. It's not.
No kind of brat up seat about it.
It's how he fall into the role. Not that the guy.
Oh, okay, right.
Family to the friends and families.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm not laughing. I'm sorry.
Of course not.
It's how he came, stumbled into the role.
That's just how life works.
Right.
And we were good friends, and he just...
Kyla gonna go viral again. Why are you doing this?
Because I want to know what his mind is. So he passed away.
He had a massive heart attack and died. And the second guy was one of the older officers. His name was Jose Cabret, and he had put a real coalition. It was amazing because these, again, not fully studious folks, meaning folks right out of academics, but he took older guys and younger guys to try to move this union thing forward. And we were really having a lot of problems with lack of equipment, not getting paid, and all kinds of stuff going on in the department. So I agreed to join the board. And the guy who was the vice president was one of the older guys. And so when Jose died, we had to have a meeting because, the vice president becomes the president. And he said, not me able all of that. And, he said, we got to find somebody new. And the next thing everybody start watching me. Well, you've been in NYPD and you got a lot more exposure. So I didn't kind of think much about it. I said, okay, I'll do it. And I told Governor Louis that, they want to elect me president of the union, the police union. He said, man, that's a good thing, And so I did that. And Judge Finch swore me in and all of that. And it was contract time. Otis Felix, the Honorable Otis Felix was the police commissioner at the time. And I put this draft contract together. They brought in this guy. Governor Louis had hired this guy, a former retired judge named Jack Bryan, to be the first chief negotiator because Hugo Dennis and those guys had got Act 4440 enacted, which governs the unions in the public sector. And I put this whole contract proposal. I rent a typewriter, and in New York, you have to learn to type. You can't write your reports, right? So they have a battery of typewriters. They need electric, and you go along to type. Anyway, I put this contract together. I got the NYPD contract and a bunch of other stuff, and we put a draft contract together. And you know who was a PBA attorney at the time? Alexander Farrelly.
Oh, wow.
Right? And when we carried the contract to Attorney Farrelly and he reviewed and we had the meeting with him, he said, what theory land I wake up? I don't gonna get nothing. This thing full of box. Y'all ain't really gonna get it. So this is what we negotiated. So we said, this is the thing we need. He said, well, okay, I am on board. And Jack Bryan had announced that he had come to Virginia, he had learned about politics and that we weren't going to use no politics to get no contract. It was going to be real negotiation. Yeah, no problem. You just reach out. You know what's going on. So I come from New York in 1960 and I learned. So you won't catch up. Anyhow, we negotiated that contract and I think about 90% of it we actually achieved. Nice. And it was strange because Jack Bryan in the office, particularly in the morning, he had a lot of energy and stuff like that. So we decided, no, what we need to do is get here out of this office. So we said, we always have to fly to St. Thomas to negotiate. So we want to negotiate in St. John, and we want to negotiate in St. Croix. So we would go to Villa Morales, and we would have Angie Morales put out a real spread, and we want tart and all kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then we went to, I can't remember the name of the family in St. John. They had an upstairs restaurant. I think one of the daughters had become a senator, if I can remember, in recent years. But she had become a senator. But they had a restaurant. So we would go to them and tell them and pay for it. We want the full thing. And then when we feed Jack Bryan in the afternoon, Jack Bryan falling asleep at the table. And Mr. Griffin, who was the assistant commissioner for the police department, he said, no, but you can't agree on that. You know what this means? He said, I am the negotiator. So I don't have any problem. And that's how we use our West Indian style of feeding you and getting you to the point. All he wanted to do was end the negotiation so he would go home and sleep. And this guy was in his 60s. After he had liked the West Indian food because of the seasoning. And when he done it, we tell him, no, but the homemade, play box ice cream, homemade ice cream, and then they put in that tart and coconut tart, and he had liked guava tart. So we used to make a whole tart and get to go home with. And man, when we finished with Jack Bryan, Al Jack Bryan said, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
So that's the way. So we got to switch them up with the food.
We know what we got to do.
All right.
So it was very interesting, but notwithstanding that in the negotiations, because you asked me how I got out of policing, I was going to UVI at night. I was signed up in the police curriculum because I was after my bachelor's degree. I wanted to get to law school. So in the negotiations, a lot of things we were doing to get the government's and the community's attention. We weren't getting any uniform allowances. We weren't getting paid our holiday pay. We weren't getting paid overtime. You're driving down the road and you hear bram and the tire going through the bush and the car smoking inside. Actually, you would put cardboard in the floor of the car because holes in the bottom of the car. That's how the cars were falling apart.
But this is 2024?
No. I could tell you it ain't like that. It ain't not like that. They're supposed to change the cars every 2 to 3 years. But when I was in the juvenile bureau, my patrol car was a VW, a Volkswagen Beetle, a little bug. And it had no passenger seat. Right? and that one a new car that gave me, but that's what I had to use. But so we decided, we had a PBA meeting and I bought a case of Glad trash bags, white trash bags. And I tell the officers, take 2 bags. Everybody take 2 bags. And when you take this magic marker, write your name, your command, and your badge number. And when your uniform get dirty, fold them and put them in the bag. When you use all your uniform, tie the bag, and carry it and put it in the police chief office. Just drop it off. Don't wait for no receipt or nothing. Since they ain't paying the uniform allowance, let it clean the uniform, right? So the police chief them must start cussing because the office smell all these dirty clothes. Pay the uniform allowance, right? And then we won't they had officers in the street without uniform. Now they can't find them, right? And then we said we're not driving the cars because they ain't break down. So I would get on the radio and do interviews with Dr. James in particular on his show because the whole territory listened to Dr. James.
Right.
And so one night, Dr. James stopped the show and he asked me, you know something? I asked other people, we don't know no map. Who is your family? Where you come from? I mean, that's how they operate in them days. And I said, well,
still.
I said, well, I'm a map, become a father as a map, but I was a Hewitt. He said, wait, Hewitt, which Hewitt? When Nathaniel Hewitt is here, I said, well, that's my uncle. That's my mother's oldest brother. He said, for Ratan? He said, stop telling people on the map. Tell people that you've been on a damn map. So, and he said, but he explained to people that when I come to the station, I don't come with any notes. The people call, they ask me all kind of questions. I just answer them. He said, I ain't against no union. He said, but we need you in the legislature. I said, no, I have no interest in politics. I explained that I want to go to law school and become an attorney. And Dr. James, every time I go back, he would bring it up. And then one Saturday, I at my grandmother's house, and my grandmother tell me, your aunt telling her on the phone she want to talk to you. I'm a grown man, I'm a policeman. I'm a police officer. I get a phone and tell my aunt hello and everything. She said, Mackie want to see you right now. Come to the house. They don't ask you what we're doing. And your response is, okay. Hang up the phone, get in my car and drive up to my uncle. When I drive up to my uncle's house, there is Dr. James in the yard. He said, yeah, you come. So he's trying to convince my uncle to convince me that I should run for the Senate. So my uncle is asking me, well, if you run and you lose. So how old are you? Like 26. So if you run, or 25 or 26, if you run and you lose, what happened to you? Nothing. He says, so what's the problem? He said, well, I ain't really interested in being a politician. I want to be an aganda law. He said, you stop the foolishness. Okay, we're going to run for the Senate. Tell Doc, we're run for the Senate. So Dr. James said, and we ain't spending no heap of money. I finished my clinic at 6 p.m. 6:30 campaign meeting. And I going to call people to join your campaign. By this time now, we had George Farrelly, who was a detective, which was Alexander Farrelly's nephew. We had kind of put him up to run for the Senate because from the union perspective, we realized we need political might. So we were promoting George. And a number of people in the department, but why are you bring he? And he said, no, but he's for the police and things. So when we had to sit down with George to tell George that, well, Dr. James want me to run, and we told Dr. James that, we got George running and things. He said, oh, bring him. I didn't think you'll win, but you could bring him. We explained to George. George had a conniption. George said that the only reason I had this plan from the beginning, and I just want to use the Farrelly name, and that he running with me, and that's foolishness because he's a Farrelly and he will win. And he bothered with me. And so Dr. James said, leave. Just put he on the side of the road, right? So we gone, and Donald Ross and a whole bunch of them, Lola Graham, Freddie McFarlane, David Best, my uncle them, I think we all get in this campaign, and that was like August, September. They're almost close to the filing date. Well, Delbert Bryan, Captain Bryan, he had run that year for the Senate too. And Milton Fred, who was a police officer in St. Thomas, he had already served one term. November, I came in fourth and won. I don't remember where George Farrelly had run, but I think somewhere back by 16 or 17.
Is it 16, 17? Me remember about 16, 17.
Somewhere back there. But I mean, that's the history, And I actually turned the qualifying age to serve as a Senate on election day. I was born November 2nd. Wow. In 1983, that was my the thing on St. Croix, G1 for birthday. That's what Dr. James said. G1 for birthday. So Dr. James really was single-handedly responsible for getting me involved in the politics, and stuck very close when they threw me out of the Senate. He said, don't worry about him, Don't worry that when I had voted for Jesse Jackson up here in Atlanta when my wife and I had moved up here, he said, don't worry about him. They put me out, and we waited 3 years. And when I went to run for re-election, we had never seen a campaign like that in St. Croix. I think for the first time, I don't know even now, but I'd gotten over 9,000 votes in that election, 2,000 and something votes ahead of the second place runner. But everybody was there. And so then Senator Redfield, who was instrumental helping to put me out, when he saw the crowd, he wanted to come and speak to my re-election campaign. And I remember Dr. James pulling me to the side, and I ain't going to repeat some of the words that Dr. James used. And he tell you now, before I turn this crowd on you, I got 10 minutes to get out of here. So, you all should know some of these old time towns, but I don't think this is a place for that. But, he scattered Senator Redfield. He said, see the smoke from his shoes. That's how he see all these black people around here. Know what's happening. He said he damn forward to vote you out the office, but he gonna speak on your behalf, And they had Edgar Ross at that time, Liliana Bellado. We all helped get them into the Senate. promote them, and we all win, all Republicans, and we had all win. And got back into the 20th legislature. But I never had any that interest for the politics.
Yeah.
And I think when they were voting me out of office in the 18th is when I made the decision, because learning from my grandmother, people can't tell you who you is or no.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be who you is, and they will learn, right? And so they had all announced that, this was going to be the end of my career. I was going to be done for, and I was a nuisance, and I would finally go home. And then the day when they had the formal vote, I stood up, and Bent Lowetz was the president of the legislature from the Lowetz family, and I likened him because we were big on Nelson Mandela, and I was very instrumental in getting the law passed preventing the GRS from investing in any instrument that benefited South Africa. That was a craze that had taken the nation. And actually, the New York Times had did a story on our bill and what we did, and we were successful in getting that done. So I liken Bent Lowetz to the whites in South Africa. And there were 4 or 5 other folks that were white in the legislature, and I tied them all together, and then it was Senator Hansen and Bob O'Connor, and I put them in with the soup because they couldn't get 10. They only had 9 to oust me. And then I let them know that I was not, when I returned to politics, I tell them I ain't running, me kind of run from a little seat in the legislature. My desk was by the window. And I point to say, when I run, I come in to run for that. And I point to Government House. And the Daily News wrote in an editorial that I had finally broken under the pressure mentally, because here my political career was coming to a forceful close, and I announced my candidacy for governor. Right? In the editorial,
the press wicked.
The Fusics they used to write the editorial. Anyhow, I went, and we will talk about my third mother, because I had Mrs. Hewitt, my grandmother, Mrs. Mapp, my maternal mother, and Mrs. Ann Abramson. I met her in the 15th legislature. She came to the legislature, and she was sitting in the audience. I heard of her, but I never met her. And when we broke for lunch, she called me. This lady, older lady, called me over, and she said, "I am Ann Abramson. Pleasure to meet you." And she said, "What are you doing for lunch?" "Well, come, I'm going to buy your lunch today." And she wanted to talk to me to find out who I was and my education. And she said, "The way you debate and speak, and I'm just so proud. And you're from the Hewitt family." And Miss Abramson and I became friends from that day till Miss Abramson literally had adopted me like a son. She didn't legally adopt me, but she was like I had the honor of her being my third mother. And I learned so much from Ann Abramson. I learned more that this shyness that I had, and letting people say what they want to me and all of that, you throw that through the window. You don't live like that. And so she became very instrumental and a confidant as a part of my life. But anyhow, like I said, the Daily News had determined that I had lost my mind. And then 3 years later, I was back in the legislature. And 2 years later, I was lieutenant governor. Nice. The Daily News wrote an editorial apologizing for telling me I had lost my mind because I was one building away from Government House. And that they decided to call me in that editorial that I was clearly prophetic in terms of seeing that.
So you went from crazy to prophetic.
I went from crazy to prophetic.
That's how it'll go.
The point I want to make in the issue is to tell young folks and to tell folks, particularly of color, that struggle under all kinds of adversity, that you can let people determine who you are. But if you decide who you are and you have the faith and you live that life, nobody can stop you from being who you are and going where you want to do. When they call you a name that's not your name, don't answer. When you answer to anything people call you, then there's anything. Right? When you answer to your name, and when people get too bold, and I might get to the story, but when I had to put the white guy, and I'm not a bigot or a racist, but when I had to put the white guy in St. Thomas in the place, when he questioned me about where I sleeping and how I sleeping, I never had the problem again.
You never asked it again?
He his friends who used to be on Facebook about which sheet I using and all of that, they like we were saying in St. Croix, they carry me back to the supermarket and put me right back on the shelf where they find me. But the point I'm making is that I was I learned that in New York.
Yes.
I learned that in Rattan.
Yes.
Now, as governor, I would concede I went too far.
Yeah.
But I let my Crucian heritage get the best of me. So I take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making is that at the end of the day, you don't let people define who you are. You determine who you are, and if you're true to yourself
Yes.
and you're true to others, you ain't got no problem being who you are. And I am 68, I'll be 69 in November, and good Ken Mapp, bad Ken Mapp. At the end of the day, people know if I tell you it rain outside, get an umbrella.
Yeah.
That mean telling you something because it sound good.
Yeah.
That's how it is,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I treat myself that way, and I live that way. And that's why I'm so blessed. And I always thank the people. They gave me a wonderful life. I'm honored to have served them in so many different capacities. But at the end of the day, I always try to be brutally honest and frank with the people at the bottom, because that's how the territory and us as a people, we're going to get ahead. We ain't going to get ahead with the meaminess and people putting on. We'll put lipstick on a pig.
It's
It's
still
still
a pig.
going to look for mud. It get pretty, you put weave on a pig, it's looking for mud.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you got to just be honest and tell people up front, this
Yes.
is how it is,
Yes.
and let me move on.
So the people want to know if you still live with a gentleman's mother. I joking with you.
No, well, I didn't even say I'd live with her. No, he asked me who I sleep with. I don't know who. Yeah, I don't know where he. Like I don't want to belabor it because I accept I was wrong.
Yes,
I went too far.
Yes.
But like I used to hear my grandmother say, when people, they had 60-something acres, and she had a lot of her grandbabies were there with her because her daughters and sons had homes in Rattan, in the same property. And particularly when tourists and things come and they want to buy the property because they're on a hill and they got a view and things. And she tell them, well, when I sell you my property, we're going to do all these picnic. That's how they used to speak. So what am I going to do with these children? Where they going to go when I sell you the property?
Exactly.
And I live to see people come with shopping bag with $5 and $10 bill to give my grandmother and tell her, well, give you this bag of money for all this property. And my grandmother looking down, she hand them back the bag, and we said, we never see so much money. And that's how we would get another lesson from our grandmother. And then when our grandmother, how 1 is, how 5 is, how 10 is, and explain to us that's all a blamey. Right? Your land is the most valuable thing you could have.
Exactly.
And my grandmother was so strict about that she divided the property to give to her children. And she put half an acre for a cemetery. And she said, when we did bury us there, because it would be hard to sell the land with all these graves. And today we have 17 members of the family in that grave.
That was her insurance.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
So, when the gentleman, like I was making this point, when the gentleman pushed me gate and come in my yard, he asked me if I had a dog. And I invited him. So he had to take what he get.
Had to take bite.
But he like I say, you rest me right down.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned that they had ousted you from the Senate. Talk a little bit more about what it is that happened in that situation.
I had moved up here. I was supposed to be getting a package deal with Morris Brown College. I believe it's the Atlanta City University system. They were going to hire me as a security in the security department, and I was able to go to school at night at Morris Brown.
Okay.
And the professor that had put the whole thing in place, when they told us to come, my wife and I came up. We got an apartment in College Park, and then half the stuff wasn't done. It wasn't put in place. And then I had to end up buying a truck and doing like deliveries and all of that. I didn't want to exhaust our savings just waiting. And Jesse Jackson was running for president. And so my wife and I got involved. And so when they had the Super Tuesday primaries, we went and voted for him. And they brought Jesse Jackson down to the Virgin Islands. We had moved back like 6 or 7 months after. And I promised my wife I wasn't going to be running for no politics or nothing. And then they invite me to a Republican convention. And it's only when the word then come out my mouth that I will go run for the Senate is when I realized I was going to run for the Senate. I just got so caught up in the moment. And we would, Sundays we would go to church or so, or go to the beach, and she would fix a meal, and we'd just go up to the beach and we would read the papers. And when I see the Avis Damana with me in the headline saying I announced I'm running for re-election, I didn't buy the papers. Where Avis is? They had none, right? I don't promise my wife I wasn't going to run unless we had both agreed. So anyhow, I ran, and then the Atlanta election system had sent the notice that I had registered here to the Virgin Islands, because obviously I told them I'd voted in the Virgin Islands. So I was the minority leader in the 18th legislature, and Lorraine Berry and Bent Lawetz and David Puritz and Alan Shatkin and Harlan Redfield and Chucky Hansen, Bob O'Connor. There was one more, I think Edgar Isles, I'm not sure, but they had formed-based majority, and I was the minority leader with Senator Roebuck, Gordon Brown, and a few others at that time. So when that came in, they started to say, well, but you ain't qualified to be in the legislature because you got to live in the Virgin Islands 3 consecutive years before you could be a senator. And never mind you're here, but you're gone for 6 months. Once you register, you change your domicile, your residency to Atlanta. So your clock got to start again. And that we had that whole 6-month battle about the whole thing. And Judge Swan had ruled that wasn't valid, that the whole issue was domicile, and they didn't even have the requisite number of votes. So they appealed his decision to the district court, and David O'Brien ruled that he was wrong and they didn't need that residency was an issue, whatever, and they went to the Third Circuit, and the Third Circuit said, well, at the end of the day, they ain't even a legal matter. This is all politics. The legislature has the right to determine the qualification of its members, and if they determine that one of your members ain't qualified, they're a separate branch. They have the power to police that branch, and whatever they determine, but as long as it's a majority vote, then that's what rule. And so that had rest that whole case. So I went and I went and worked with Mrs. Abramson. She had a deal with me that she had put me into this deal that when I'm not in politics, I will come and work for one of her companies. And that's how it was. So, and I was very happy to serve under Mrs. Abramson, because it was, she paid me and pay me well, but it was always an education. It really was like working for your mom. And I did my time, and when it was time to run,
you
after
beat them
3
bad.
years,
You beat them bad.
And when they had this swear, they had Mighty Pat had write a song, Coming Again. He had me come to St. Thomas for his carnival. The map come back, and when they call my name, they're going to tremble and all of that. And unfortunately, when they call my name today, some of them, I don't know why they're trembling. I ain't running for nothing. But anyway, when I got back in the legislature, and you had the swearing in, you get to do your speech, and before you thank everybody and all of that. But what I did was I looked at the senators that were still in the legislature that had voted me out. I took my time and I watched each of them. And then I turned around to the audience and I did what I got from Poltergeist and whispered in the microphone, I'm back. And the whole place fell out, and it actually became the headline in the Daily News.
Again,
I'm back. The guy who had crack on the string. And it, like I said, my career, I've had a very good ride. And my relationship with the people of the Virgin Islands is almost like a personal relationship in the sense that we get along and then we don't get along. Particularly when things are really bad, I seem to be very popular politically. And then when I get in and I'm explaining, what people know of me, I work really very hard at whatever I do, public or private, even in my own business. I give my all because I am really result driven. And when I telling folks, well, if this is what we got to do, this is what they're paying us to do, people are always like that. And so I just fall in, and what I'm saying is not about blame. I'm not talking about right or wrong. I'm just talking about what I feel is my personal relationship with the people of the Virgin Islands as a whole. They love me and I love them. But we fall in and out of favor through my political career.
When did you get a call from Schneider? How was that call? And, how did you feel? when you get a car?
Well, I was actually running for governor myself.
Right.
But I would only run on the condition I wanted to get Mrs. Joel Malloy to be my running mate, because I at that point in my career, I'm seen now as a very strong advocate for the island of St. Croix. Because
Right.
remember the WAPA deal had come up, Governor Farley and us, we had an agreement that not only were we going to purchase the West Indian Company, but we're going to do something significant for the island of St. Croix, because our infrastructure was just always falling apart. And he agreed in the meeting at Government House we would do that. And then after a couple of days later, Lieutenant Governor Derek Hodge and my good friend Jimmy O'Brien and Tura Watlington said, I robbed Governor Farley, and we ain't doing that. So I had made it clear to the governor that if we don't have two parts of this bill, I voted no. Mm-hmm. So they challenged me. They basically said, well, then vote no, because then you'll always be a district politician. You could never win a territorial seat, because if you vote against Waiko, where the people of St. Thomas see that a sacred land, and you vote against that, then we don't have to worry about you ever again. And I said, well, I am a man of my word. Yeah. And I come to the legislature to represent me. Yeah. I come to represent St. Croix. Mm-hmm. And the governor himself shake our hand and made a deal that all of you witnessed. Yeah. And if you all decide that at the end, dying on bid a deal, we're going down one way of the road, I go, but me and that boss. Yeah. I don't live like that. Yeah. And I got up in the legislature and I explained why my vote would be no. And there were a couple of St. Croix senators who decided they couldn't vote no again, you know. And I had no problem with that. There were 3 or 4 of us. I know Chucky Hansen and Senator Liliana Bellado. We tell them no, and we vote in no. There were a few others that decide, well, no, I gonna go change my vote. You gotta decide what you gotta do, because like I learned from church and my grandparents, you're responsible for getting you into heaven. you can't help nobody else, right? So I had no problem with it, but I got up and I made my speech. And when they called the name, I got up and everybody could hear me. I said no. And of course, the people of St. Croix was very elated about that, because you had somebody really standing for them. I don't think people understand, and I digress a little bit. I don't think people understand why they had this issue with St. Croix, St. Thomas. They have a lack of love. Yes. I think people at Vojans, we all love each other. Yes. But the way the system worked, if St. Croix, if you need a car for the Department of Human Services and you put in a requisition, we need a van for the seniors. You know how it works? They buy the van, but the van going to St. Thomas, and then we're going to clean the van that's in St. Thomas and send that to St. Croix. If you move to a new office, if you move the government to an office, so the desk them in St. Croix broke down, and you decide I need 3 new desks, and you put your requisition in, it goes to St. Thomas. When the 3 desks come, they're going in St. Thomas, and the old desks in St. Thomas going down to Public Works so they could sand them, varnish them, and then they go on the boat to St. Croix. And that's the furniture that will end up in the St. Croix office.
And I'm kind of glad to digress. Even now, one question answered. We interviewed Senator VLA, and we was trying to get to the crux of why is that the system? Me and Kyle, and we're from St. Thomas, but we truly believe that the key to a stronger Virgin Islands is a robust St. Croix. Yeah. St. Croix, St. Croix is the spearhead. It just naturally look at it.
You can't have a family and treat one like an outsider. Yes. But I think the family gonna flourish.
Right.
They
have the land, they have the resources, they have the ability to do a lot of things St. Thomas can't do. St. Thomas really just tourist.
Right. And I think that was the prevailing concern, particularly when tourism in St. Thomas had become so robust. Right. Folks promoting the politics in St. Thomas kind of felt, the business community, that if you get St. Croix up and running, you're going to take from them.
Never.
Not recognizing, and even in the legislature, I always try to tell folks, St. John has its own brand identity for tourism. St. Thomas has its brand identity, and we need to foster a brand identity for St. Croix. They're in the same. So rather than having the U.S. Virgin Islands compete against all the Caribbean islands, let St. Croix be in the competition. Let St. Thomas be in the competition. Let St. John. So the U.S. Virgin Islands will have 3 different types of images in the tourism picture, right? And some will go to both, right? St. Croix can't handle the volume of cruise ship traffic, which is the crust of tourism on the island of St. Thomas. Not only because we don't have the kind of harbor and the infrastructure for it, but it's a cruise ship. We don't want all these people on the island. We won't be able to handle that, right? But we will. Jesus Christ, man! What the hell are not here?
I made a post, right? I made a post and say, "Wow, you got a lot of cruise ship in St. Croix," and in the comments they were like, "We don't want these people here." So I was like, "I don't understand. Like, this is the
that's the tourism they want.
That's the tourism they want.
Tourism in St. Croix is more for the hotel, for renting the house. We want people horseback riding, hiking, driving around the place. But we can't handle 2,000. We can't handle 1,000 strange people on the island one time because St. Croix. We now my Christian people won't get upset with me, but some of the women, they can't just watch the tourism. Well, will you see her shoes? Or look at her heels. Somebody need to get a file for her. Look at the back of her foot. That we got to look at everything and comment. So we went into that. So it's the divergency of the politics could is always different. But the reality is that the excuse would always be, well, the capital is St. Thomas, so this is how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. But the thing about it is like, to me, you really don't have to do that much marketing for St. Thomas or St. John. How it's set up, you really can't get to St. John without coming to St. Thomas.
Right.
And most likely, if you're going to Tatola, you're going to come through St. Thomas.
Which is another brand of customer that only we kind of bypass that were coming through St. Thomas to go to BVI.
Right. We bypass that, right? Yeah. Exactly. So that their argument that they're going to lose by St. Croix gaining, for me, don't make no sense.
Right. But in those days, people's resistance to a lot, like some people today, is the resistance of the unknown. If I don't know and you can't promise me and assure me, then I is against it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the business community in St. Thomas and St. John recognized very early on is that you have to have political advocacy and you have to support campaigns. So when they give support, when they give monetary support to some of the senators and stuff in St. Croix, then their resistance is not as fierce as others who don't depend on it.
Right. So the call from Mr. Schneider, former Governor Schneider.
Oh yes, we were. Yes, I'm sorry about that. It wasn't actually a call. When I announced to the public that I wasn't going to run anymore because Ms. Malloy had declined, and I was going to run for re-election. My good friend Julio Brady was running, and he had selected Holland Redfield. And Julio was really a very good friend and advisor and confidant. So he called me in, and he was talking to me about he had picked Holland Redfield, and then he said, "I want to tell you why I ain't pick you." And I said, "No, you don't. Nobody never have to explain to me why they send me an invitation to a party. I'm glad not to go."
Yeah.
So I some people look caught up and say, "But you going to a party and you invite me?" I ain't come from that side of the tracks. You don't have to. No. Don't explain that.
Yeah.
Let get on to brass. So he wanted to get my support, and I could support Julio for governor any day of the week, not with Holland Redfield. So I told him. So Rocky Liebert really was the catalyst. Senator Almondo, Rocky Liebert was the catalyst that brought Governor Schneider, Dr. Schneider, and me together. And one time we were all someplace together, and we were sitting down chatting and having a good time, the three of us. And then Rocky said, "Well, why I don't cut out BS out, right? Look at you, Dr. Schneider. You're esteemed, you're knowledgeable, you've achieved so much. And Mapp, you're a bright young guy coming up. Why don't put on this hard crap bullshit and get together for the sake of the people of the Virgin?" And that's how we kind of started to talk. And then Roosevelt David, who was a part of Dr. Schneider's effort, had a restaurant, the Bluebeards, up at Bluebeards. And so they had, Governor Schneider and Dr. Schneider had invited me to dinner. And they had a private area in the restaurant, and they set up the dinner there so we could have a talk. And so we having the conversation, and he's explained to me how he's running, and then I'm explaining to him about the politics and all of that. I thought we had a really good dinner, and we shook hands, and then he said, "Okay, we're going to get together in a couple of days in St. Croix." Now, after they had the election and everything, and we won, Roosevelt David pulled me aside. He said, "I'll tell you something you ain't never know, I said, "What is it?" He said, "When you talk about that first dinner, you come out, you get in your car, your driver take you. I was a senator then, and you gone. I run to Roy, like, I'll make the deal. And he said, Dr. Schneider, I don't understand that man. That man said, like he tried to educate me about politics, he telling me this and that. I don't understand that man, right? But I know the politics. Yeah. I would never tell Dr. Schneider what to do in the operating room or what to do our patient. Yeah. I come up to my grandparents. Yeah. I come up to Governor Evans, a little bit of Cyril King, and Wang Louis. I see politics up front, close, and personal. And it's a people's game. All the thing them people like to talk about is all the policy and thing. It's important. Make vote. It's how you deal with people and how people perceive you and how you build alliances. And you have to have a foundation of close personal friends. I have friends that have been with me in my first election in 1982. Is still my close personal friends today, right? In and out of politics, we close. I know what's going on in their family. I help when I can. They help me when they can. That you got to build real alliances. So anyhow, we meet, and then we went and we had a breakfast. Miss Abramson hosts our breakfast. So Miss Abramson explaining, because Miss Abramson's niece, Dr. Croix, was Dr. Schneider's assistant commissioner on the health many, many years. So Cora would, explain to her aunt, Schneider's style and all of that. So anyhow, Miss Abramson is a woman unachieved. People have not achieved the things that Ann Abramson achieved in the 60s as a Black woman. So she wasn't fearful about anything or anyone. And she made her wealth and her life, and so she didn't pull no punches, right? She was a devout Catholic. And when something won't go right in the church, she called the bishop and let me explain something to you, right? Because that's how Miss Abramson was. And so she sit Dr. Schneider in a corner and she gave him what she considered her talk. And through that process, and with Jeff Prosser and all of us, we all got together and decided this could work. And I had one single condition. Governor Schneider had offered me, like Governor Louis had did for his Lieutenant Governor Julio Brady, the law enforcement community and the police department, because that was my background. And I declined. I said, no, it's one governor, it's one government, breaking the government up and giving me a piece, and that really ain't gonna work. I want to be involved in the meetings so I could hear what's happening. I want to be able to express my opinion and give input. And at the end of the day, and I want to be respected. At the end of the day, you're the governor, and when you make a decision, I'm on board. And that's all I asked for. And we got into office, and it went south. Right? It went south, and it went south fast.
Explain what's south.
We were smart. We were smart. Like fifth grade or so.
Yeah, the thing about politics, particularly when you become governor, there's two prevailing things that people in the community compete for: influence and access. You got people who want to have the most influence over the governor and want to have the greatest access. And people in the community and the society determines that they're on the top of the chain when they can have an open door walking policy with a governor, and when the governor listening to what they're saying and can be persuaded in their opinion. And so I am a person of strong opinions. I don't expect to be the prevailing opinion with Dr. Schneider, because we didn't have that kind of relationship. But people felt that when they would express to him what they wanted or what they thought he should do, and he would have a conversation with me, I would tell you, but that's not the benefits. No, you won't pay the price for that, and explain the politics. So it was very important to get me kind of out the way. And so the way to kind of do that with Governor Schneider was to try to make the person against his self-interest. So you would hear stories like, yeah, but you listening to Mapp, but no, Mapp ain't plan to run with you again or you're run against you. So he only shaping you to do what is in his, because they always have me like I'm the conniver. I always have a grand plan. I can't say good morning unless I got a plan in place, right? So, and that really began to put the wedge between us. And then he crossed the red line for me. My red line is disrespect. When you disrespect me, then all bets are off, because I don't walk around disrespecting people. I have no history of talking melee and propagandering behind people's back and tearing people down. When you come to me with that, we have a problem. And so the disrespect kind of kicked in, and then so it went south.
Yeah.
You know?
Gotcha.
So it wasn't good matrimony.
No. I think they were folks that said two Congo can't live in the same hole. and you know, the interesting thing is that after we were both out of office, Governor Schneider and his wife Barbara and I were in Florida, Miami, for some event, and it had to do with the Taiwanese government and something else. So we had a private dinner. The three of us decided to go to dinner. And I really wanted to explain to him that it really wasn't working. This is like March or April of the first year.
Oh, wow.
It really
the first year?
Yeah. I tell him it went so fast. That was like the home of gravity, you know?
The home of gravity.
I kind of said, well, I think I could find a way out that could work for all of us. And the way out for me was I would run for Congress. Victor Fraser, we didn't think were doing so well. I would run for Congress, and then Governor Schneider could appoint my replacement of whoever he want. And he, no, don't do that. And, you know, we could get through these differences and everything. I kind of agreed. It was the second year. I kind of agreed. And that was like February, and March was transfer day. And by the time we got back to the Virgin Islands and transfer day, which was 2 weeks later, we were right back where we started. So, you know, I tell people as a child, I used to get beat often. I was very mischievous, but I never get beat twice for the same thing, right? And so I didn't have to go back for a second cup, right? So I decided, well, I'm going to run for Congress. And Roy was convinced that I was running for Congress only to launch a campaign to challenge him. So rather than support me and get me out of the administration, he campaigned heavily against me for delegate to hold me in, and then started this crazy propaganda in the radio that I should resign, I shouldn't run for Congress and stay as lieutenant governor. So I had to kind of remind that you are run for governor, you was commissioner, you didn't resign.
Exactly.
Well, come with this crazy thing, you know. And I raised with older people, so you ain't hard to put a story together, and so you know they had to drop that. And so when the election was over, I announced then and there I wasn't going to run for anything again in the foreseeable future. I was going to go and pursue my education, and you know they could do whatever they wanted to do. But on the inside, my cousin called me, Vern Hodge, and told me, you know, I got a gentleman that's running for governor, and I want you to meet him. Maybe you could help him. And, you know, Dr. Turnbull. So I said, sure, I will see him. And my office was at Belgian Place because the lieutenant governor's office had gotten, we were under renovation and restoration.
From Maryland, right?
Yeah, from Maryland. And I did a complete historic restoration of the building. But anyhow, Governor Turnbull, Dr. Turnbull, Professor Turnbull came to see me, and I agreed I will help him, and I would be more effective helping him from the background.
Right.
And so
real quick, this is Schneider's first term, right?
Right.
So at the end of his first term, right when they were about to finish, that's when Turnbull was running.
Yeah, because nobody wasn't really challenging him. Governor Turnbull was really going to run for the Senate. And then a couple of folks said, but we ain't really got no challenger to run against Governor Schneider. So he said, well, I'll run. Me and Freddie, I'll run.
Yeah.
So Governor Turnbull put his hat in the ring to run for him.
And you got behind the scenes.
Yeah. At point, you're taking me parts of a book that I don't want to kind of do. I want to buy the book.
They're going to still buy the book. They're going to still buy the book. And they're going to buy the book.
Yeah. Make sure I buy that book when it come out. Yeah?
I asked him I told him I would raise my own money to help him. And I just needed his permission to use the Turnbull James campaign logo.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be doing ads. I would be doing full page ads weekly on behalf of the campaign.
Yeah.
I said, now, I want to assure you, I'm not going to do any low root or disrespectful ads that you wouldn't like.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to be associated with. But I will do some. And at one point he had called me to me. He said, oh no, every Wednesday I don't gotta make them sure they bring me the paper. I want to say what they added because they really had become. And I had help on the side putting these ads together.
Yeah.
And nobody in the VI wanted to put their face to endorse Governor Turnbull because they felt Governor Schneider was a bit vengeful and vindictive. That's what they felt.
That's what they felt.
And so what we did is we went to an entity like iStock. And we got refinery workers, nurses, teachers that looked like us. And we started putting their pictures in the paper saying why they endorsed Charles Turnbull and even put a little colorful Crucian twang or St. twang and anything. And then when we look about 5-6 weeks after we were doing that, Walter Brunner come up with this ad for Turnbull, asking people, they'll give people $50, they could find any of these people in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, that's what I asked. Like,
because they were looking for them, right? And they couldn't find them. But Governor Turnbull, obviously, he did prevail. And, how I should end this segment is to say that Governor Schneider and I found our way back to each other and actually became very close friends. And he actually helped me in my gubernatorial runs.
Oh, wow.
And when I served as governor, he was a confidant for me and used to give me a lot of advice and information having to do with the healthcare issues. And it wasn't unusual to see him or Governor Turnbull when we were doing public events that, I would invite them to come and sit with me as a governor. When I won, I asked Governor DeYoung if he would mind inviting them to Government House. I wanted to get a picture with all of us, all the living governors, and in Government House. And he said, sure. He said, but you think Governor Schneider won't come? So I said, yeah, why he won't come? He said, he went to call my name to Governor Schneider. Of course, we don't know. So I said, no, man, he will come. And I spoke with Roy, and he said, I would go. And then Roy was really, it was very painful to him for losing the re-election because, again, politics is unforgiving. Notwithstanding his style, Roy really was a true committed Virgin Islander to the people of the Virgin Islands. He really worked hard and he made a lot of sacrifices, monetary sacrifices he didn't have to make because on the U.S. mainland, he was a well-known, successful oncologist, surgical oncologist. He had developed surgical tools that other physicians and health facilities were using. So he didn't have to vest himself. He came home in that wave that Governor Cyril King created where he reached out to Virgin Islanders who were successful in all facets of life on the U.S. mainland. And in some of them, he encouraged them and they was glad to come home. And some of them, he put a one of guilt on them. So they said, okay, I'll give you 4 years. And they came home because he really wanted to create this cadre of, just top-notch folks in the public policy area to take the Virgin Islands from a place where, and I'm slowing down because I want to use my words. I want to use the right words. Through life, we all go through different stages. So we crawl, we creep, we learn to walk, we run, we fall down, we get bruised. As we grow, we get better at everything. So through the Virgin Islands history, Governor Pywanski and Earl B. Otley kind of had this alliance where the Pywanski types will kind of take the private sector and y'all can have the public sector, right? So you take care of your people and whatever they need and want, and then, you made that the loyalties of party affiliation, and you come home from school, you're going to definitely get a summer job, you graduate from college, you're going to definitely get a government job, and we're going to be down, the other set going to be down on Main Street, and we're going to make our money, and, we're going to learn to live hand in hand. Governor King wasn't in that. Governor King didn't see the Virgin Islands should be divided like that, that the people of the Virgin Islands deserve the best of all facets of life. And so bring successful Virgin Islanders home to run the government and just stop giving anybody a job. Just because you pick up 10 case a beer and put in the truck for the campaign don't mean you should be the deputy commissioner.
Yeah.
Right? You should at least have some knowledge
Yeah, what are you
of
doing?
what you're deputy commissioning about.
Right.
And so, and the next aspect of Cyril King was, if you want the community to be better, you go work to get it so. Me winning an election ain't gonna transform the Virgin Islands to a positive place. Me working hard alone ain't gonna transform the Virgin Islands to a better place. Each one of us have to put our sweat and tears at the grindstone to improve this community, to create the opportunities, to create the healthcare system and the education system that the Virgin Islanders coming behind will do better and have better than our generation is having. And so he was very insistent about people going to work, being at the job and doing the work. And that's where you get the stories that, you know, he could go down to Normandy, 11 o'clock, and people jumping through the window because they ain't in their office. And again, because as long as Main Street happy and the tax coming in, yeah, big job. You ain't had, Governor Evans had a housing commissioner that he know if he wanted to talk after 12 o'clock, he know the governor, he know which rum shop he got to go to find him. And that might have been okay then. But that isn't sustainable as life goes forward, you know?
Right. So when you finally reach, I will guess, the proverbial mountaintop, even though you didn't set out for it, but you did tell them you're going to end up in government house.
Yes.
What was that feeling like?
Because at that point, you done create, I don't want to say create, but you done assisted 2 governors. Because folks would argue that Schneider, a lot of him getting elected had to do with you.
Because we created a coalition.
Exactly.
And again, he really was a novice in the politics.
Yes.
He's a very intelligent, studied man. Don't
But it's
get
a
me
new
wrong.
arena.
I was less of a novice in anything having to do with the healthcare system.
Yes.
He was a novice in politics. And what you don't understand is that up to the point when we signed the prenuptial agreement, everything I bring is mine. So when you break the coalition down and I go, I think me walking away alone.
Me and everything else
all
that
the
come with.
people that decide that come in. Because people would say, people would counsel me, don't do that. Because he's going to stunt your professional development. Because y'all ain't going to get along. And I said, no, man, we'll get along. Y'all don't get along. Right? And in hindsight, retrospect, whatever, I don't regret running with Roy Schneider. I don't. I think what I know now and I look back, maybe I would handle things different and I accept my share of the responsibility in the breakdown of our working relationship. But I had been very experienced in the politics. And when I went to the Kennedy School to Harvard and I got my master's in public administration and then went to the business school, when I came back, Governor Turnbull had offered me the position as the Director of Finance and Administration at the Public Finance Authority. My studies and everything, and my experience spoke to me being able to do that job. And so I was able to become a good resource for Governor Turnbull. And the 5 years or 4 years I spent at the PFA, the history is there and it speaks to how I was able to be a resource and help him and work with his team and his cabinet for many of the things he was able to accomplish for the Virgin Islands.
So after that, after Turnbull, he got out. You really have no political aspirations at that point.
Well, I knew I wanted to run for governor and I was going to run for governor. Governor DeYoung at the time when he was running, he had come to me with a blammy, asking me, telling me that, if I support him, if I win, I will let you stay at the PFA. And I been there, done that. You can't sell that. That's how Johnny K can't sell in this house. Yeah. So I obviously told him no, and I knew I was going to run. And so I ran, and he prevailed. He won. He put a very good machine together, and he raised money, and he won fair and square. So I just went to the private sector like I always do when I'm not in politics and did my thing. And I knew ultimately I would be running for governor.
Again, I got you. So that determined, like, some people will say, like, can't take a L. And in sports especially, they'll say you got to learn to lose, right? And then some greats in sports might say, the day losing, I become comfortable with losing, would be the day I'm no longer great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after that loss and you didn't get in, what motivated you to say, you know what? I don't care that I just take this last, I'm going to do this thing again.
Well, I had been in politics before, and I had lost for Senate re-election seats, and then I had won again. If you know, when people come to me for advice about running for public office, I ask them two things.
Yeah.
I tell them two things you have to cover before you get in this business. One, you have to figure out what it is you have done or experienced in your life that you never want to see on the front page of a newspaper, because you're going to be there.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't want the public to know, then politics ain't for you.
Yeah.
And two, you have to be able to handle defeat.
Yes.
Because if you lose and you decide, well, that's the end of the world, then that's not the game you should be in.
Exactly.
In my life, I've had ups and downs. I was raised with ups and downs. So the question is, what do you learn from the downs?
Yes.
So that when you have the next up, it's a better up. And so I didn't see the defeats as the ending of anything.
Yeah.
And when I was in the private sector and I made very good money, I had already come from a home and a family that always taught us, when you walk in for yourself or for someone, the very first thing you do when you get your check is pay yourself. See, because Uncle Sam going with his piece before you see the check.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next bill you have to pay is not your mortgage, your car note, your groceries. It's you.
Yeah.
And that means you have to take some piece of that money, even if it's $5, and put it away, because that's your piece. That's the piece you're paying yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised over time when you keep sticking money away and you learn about investing money and making some decent return on your money. You'll be surprised when you don't need that money, what that money to turn into what it'll look like. And so I had really good opportunities in the private sector, and I got paid really very well. And Hugo was a wonderful lesson, because prior to Hugo, I had one Olive Chain, and I had one the Bose sound system, and I had one the most expensive colognes and the most expensive Bruno Magli's.
Yeah.
And when Hugo come, Hugo throw them thing up in the tree and when the roof went. So you learn really quick that the material things that you're wasting money on, you ain't really got no whole heap of value. So it all of that is part of life's education. So as I made money, I didn't have to run around and I didn't have nothing to show to nobody.
Yeah.
I don't have to prove to anybody who I is. I make sure that my health was good. My mother was taken care of. I put away money and I eat well, sleep well, dress well, and speak well.
Yes.
And I didn't have to worry. And so at one point I hadn't worked for like 5 years and I ain't had a late
And you were
bill.
good.
I had my money put away. I could do what I have to do.
Nice.
And that's what you have to do in life. And you're a money manager and a counselor, and I'm sure you tell people
Definitely.
what they must do. Even when I had my own private earnings and I would do my taxes and I would talk about my Social Security payments, people tell me, son, when you report all of that, you go pay like Social Security? And I said, well, yeah,
exactly.
because that's part of the put away. And I ain't giving them a business, but I have a wonderful Social Security check. I have a brand new 5,000 square foot house in Florida, and the mortgage is less than my Social Security payment. So, and I still have my pension.
And everything.
I guess earlier this year is when I announced to the company that I was working with that I wasn't going to do any more projects. But they wrestled me into agreeing to just do one more project for them. And I ain't interested in earning no more money. I'm interested in walking. I don't want to have to get up and go to the airport and get on a plane and fly. And, it's like when I was governor, people, they didn't have anything else to report. And, they talk about where I sleep and where I eat. I wasn't sleeping anywhere and eating anywhere that I wasn't sleeping and eating before I was governor. 'Cause no one could say in my 40 years on the public stage that I walked around with ears, that I anyway pretended that I was better than anybody else. You could find me in any nook and cranny, any place in the Three Virgin Islands. And I am just as comfortable as when the president invited me to dinner at the White House, because that's the life I had. So when I went to Government House, I didn't know that there was an expectation that the linen and the towels that the Youngs had used, I was supposed to use them. My grandmother would have come out her grave. You know, somebody said, turn over your grave.
Yeah, she would have come out.
She would have opened the tomb and hit me with a tombstone. Like, what going on up there?
Yeah.
Right? And nobody could expect things like that. So I call them all minutia now because they really are in the scheme of the whole thing. But you know, the Daily News made it its lifelong mission that if I ate in Sparks in Manhattan, they had to report I ate the Sparks. I went to a ice cream shop. I had an ice cream thing in Manhattan. That shop was open in 1954, so I took the government crowd there and showed them how they do hot. You could get a hot, a hot chocolate in the middle of the winter with ice cream and stuff like that, and paid for it. And they had I didn't even know till I saw in the Daily News, they had a $1,000 ice cream sundae on the menu. And they would serve it in like a glass trimmed with gold. I didn't know that. And the receipt that I had, obviously, for the 16 of us that were there, the total bill was $200 and something. So clearly I didn't buy the $1,000
Exactly.
Ice cream, but they put it on the front page. They put a picture of it on the menu on the front page that I could have had that.
Yeah.
So they made an effort as a governor, I'm going to tell you how I see it now.
Please do.
Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I'm not a bigot or a racist, but, you know, if you was a governor of New York or the governor of Florida, then, yeah, you should be in those places.
Yeah.
But from the islands,
Yeah.
you know, you need to go back in your spot. And Almina Hewitt and Vashti Mapp had long teach me any spot I in is my spot.
Yeah.
Nobody can assign me a spot.
Yeah.
Assign me a desk when I'm in school.
Yeah.
When I leave school, them assignment days is
Over.
over. And you know, they call that, and I might as well delve into it. Some folks say, but he too damn arrogant. There's nothing arrogant about me. I was raised to be a very confident person. I came up under a very confident grandmother, a very confident mother. My mother didn't play. My mother went to school full-time and worked full-time to support us. And then after she finished her nursing and got her papers and her license and her degree and all of that, my mother worked 2 8-hour shifts, 2 different jobs in 2 different health facilities to give us things that we didn't have to have, but that was very important, she felt, in our upbringing. We go to New York for the summer, and we get to go to Coney Island and the Kenmore Theater and the parks and all of that. But we also had to dress up in a suit and go to Manhattan and sit down in a restaurant and have a formal dinner.
Yes.
And then go to Broadway and see Paul Bailey and Satchmo, Louis Armstrong and the greats on the stage. And go to a Philharmonic concert and listen to the music. Not because we didn't like Calypso, but she felt it was important to broaden our knowledge. And my mother would make sure on both of those jobs she had Tuesday and Wednesday off. And she get her check on Wednesday morning. We know we have to get up. And we go in on the Flatbush bus, and she taking us down to the Dime Savings Bank, and she's sitting down, and she got her bank book, and she showing us. And I'm a little child, showing us this is how life is. You know, and when it's time to get ready for school, she take us, she buy us our uniforms, and say we go to the shoe store. She ain't picking up the shoes and pick up her shoes and tell me, you sit down and wait. Let me get Dougie and David. Let's get their shoes. And then she tell me, I need a tall job for your feet. And I'm not the guy buy by price. I pick up something, and when she turn it over, she shake her head. And then, of course, by the time I become an adult and I'm showing out why I spend, she say, I know, you're gonna tell me. But that's I'm saying all of that to say the environment under which we were raised was to prepare us to be successful and to let us understand that there are going to be people in the world that's going to marginalize you and tell you who you are and what you ought to be. And you know, in a way, in the Caribbean, that is still happening in a very much larger scale, not just with individuals, but with whole communities, because people move into your community and they believe it ought to be this way, and they have some money. So they do everything to keep it the way they want to keep it. And the question is whether you're bright enough to sing the refrain in the hymn or bellow out your own. And where I come from in Rattan and the way I was raised, We don't sing for your hymn book.
Yeah.
We don't sing for ours.
Oh, yes. And real quick, Red, what you said was just so it hit so home for me because one of my biggest message is a stronger community is built from the household.
Yes.
We have a tendency in the Caribbean and the Virgin Islands specifically where we expect whoever running the territory to come in our household and raise our children and feed our children and take care of us. And the day we decide as a community that houses are built from the ground up, not from the top down.
Right.
So the minute we take our household and raising our household more serious as far as giving our kids more experiences, the experiences that we didn't have as kids. So whatever experiences we had, we give them that and we give them more. So then we're going to get a community where if a governor go eat at an expensive restaurant, ain't a big of a deal. Because guess what? My mother take me to an expensive restaurant. So the bigger issues that we need to be talking about, we ain't talking about it.
In these times, the parents are eating at expensive restaurants and enjoying their life and not showing their children the life that they should be enjoying
as well
as they come forward. So the children are missing that part. So then when they become adults, their children are missing that part because no, it's my time to eat at an expensive restaurant.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So there's a disconnect from Governor Mapp's time and his grandmother. It's really our generation where the disconnect is.
Yeah.
And there are many families still doing like how my grandparents raised us in the Virgin Islands.
Not as prominent,
widespread.
Yeah.
But they do exist. And what is even more profound than what you said, and I'll just add another dimension, which is worse than the dependency that the government will give you this and give you that, is that we have a, and this is Caribbean wide, we have a bigger challenge where we believe that somebody from outside will come in and save us. So if I come in from outside and you know me, I could get short pants, put on some expensive shoes and walk with a briefcase. And when I tell you A, B, C, and you be ready to eat right to no, let me go with it.
Yeah.
And then if you go back to the Virgin Islands and you tell them that no, that don't make no sense. They want to go around with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so you have to try to convey to folks and to try to convince them that their knowledge is as good or better than the folks from outside. Yeah. I wanted to know what God-forsaken place my mother sent us to in the Virgin Islands. And I left 2 or 3 or 4 days after I graduated from high school. I couldn't wait to get out, to go into the New York City Police Department and meet a bunch of crazy people and realize that, wait. That wasn't a God-forsaken place. That place was a blessing. Because what I learned, some of these folks haven't had no experience like that. So notwithstanding their education, notwithstanding their money, they were never going to make it in life because they weren't prepared to make it in life. And so the people, as in my political positions, I always try to speak to the people of the Virgin Islands about having self-confidence, believing in yourself. When somebody come and telling me that they are going to build a 350-room hotel in Croix, and they're going to put it in Great Pan, and they're going to create 2,000 jobs, and I need to get behind the project. I'm behind the project. Oh, yeah, but you need to give us $140 million. So then I have to stay, wait. If I have to give you $140 million, you ain't building a hotel.
Exactly.
Are you building a hotel?
Exactly.
So why I need you? Because you won't go get paid. You won't go get a profit. So the people the 2,000 or 3,000 jobs you created, that's the day building the hotel.
Exactly.
Not you.
Exactly.
And when you're telling people that and explaining to people that, they looking at you, but he don't got place for people to stay. But you go build it. You need to bring some person in, and then you'll find out the person got some criminal record. And I always tell people, when somebody sit down to the table to talk to you, and they mark teeth on their forehead, grab your belongings and leave, because if you don't, by the time the discussion done, they're gonna take something that is yours and go with it. The thief don't bring things to you. So you have that challenge to really convey to the people of the Virgin Islands in mass, because the people of the Virgin Islands who know this, that they have to have some self-confidence, and everything people feed you ain't worth eating. Everything somebody willing to give you ain't worth having. And you have to know what the difference is.
So true.
Right.
So true.
So I don't know if this is factual or not, but I'm not that old. You've been
You
in
know
governor.
Latal.
Yeah, I'm 40. Yeah.
You're that old.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I ain't that
I
old.
would pay money to be 50.
How much money you want? How much money you have?
You can't get me to be 50. I'll be 69 in a couple of months. But I want to be 50 with the knowledge I have today.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You want? Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. So you've been in government house for 3 major hurricanes. I don't think I ever.
I actually had 5, but I've been in government house for Maryland, and then Maria and
Oma.
Yeah.
and
Oma.
and
Or Maria.
Yeah,
That's what
or
they call it.
Maria,
Just
yes,
push it
yes.
together.
Yes.
How did Hugo prepare? Not Maryland. How did Maryland prepare you for Maria, or did it prepare you at all? They're two unique.
There was a Hugo,
Right.
and there was a gentleman who was in charge of the Virgin Islands Territorial Emergency Management Agency by the name of William Harvey. He was a senator. We had served together, and his family and my family know each other very well. And when Hugo had come, there was a big thing in St. Croix that the governor didn't come and all kind of confusion. But that was the first time the Virgin Islands had a major impact before 1929, since 1929. But Bill Harvey kind of knew my ways and style, and I was really an avid reader. So he kind of called me and asked me to come, and I went. I was working for the government, and so I would give some advice of some of the things that they needed to do. And Bill himself talked about how he felt the value of that advice and recommendation, and he used it. And then, of course, when Derek kind of found out that Bill was collaborating with me, when you mentioned my name to Derek Hodge, it didn't go well because he had challenged Governor Louis. 5 of them had run against Governor Louis, and people give me a lot of credit for my speaking abilities. And I had to take he on the radio. And so I was persona non grata as far as Derek was concerned. But through the course of Maryland, I got a lot of experience. And again, when I would sit with Governor Schneider and the FEMA folks would come, you would hear the discussion, but people weren't prepared for a hurricane. They weren't talking about, St. Thomas didn't really have, they had some impact from Hugo, but not, St. Croix was completely wiped out. I would explain to the governor in our own private sessions, this is what will happen and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, everybody heard me on the radio the night, and many people were, when they were losing their roofs, and some people were running out in the middle of the storm and wanting the police to come and help them because the roof had gone. And you have to tell them, there's no police coming. There is no rescue. If your house is falling apart, you need to do A, B, C, D, and E. If it get to the point where you start to lose your walls, get your mattress and go in your bathtub and cover yourself. Because that is the extent of your benefit. And so those things were profound. Now, my education in the Kennedy School, in managing government and crisis and everything, I was glad when I asked Ann Abramson and Elmo Robert, when I was making the decision of whether I'm going to run for another office or go to school. And the Kennedy School at Harvard had made an offer to me that I couldn't reject. I was there on an executive program as lieutenant governor. And I just happened to be asking the lady that had put that particular program together from the admissions office about an opportunity to come and do my undergraduate work to get my bachelor's. I was still pursuing this bachelor's. And she, having my background, she gave me a time and told me, come to the office and we'll talk. And I did. And she pulled up my record and everything. And she said, the amount of experience you have in the public sector and the different things you've done and the diversity of your history, you don't need a bachelor's degree. We might want to offer you an opportunity to come to the Kennedy School for a year or two and you work on your master's. And I'm like, but I don't have a bachelor's. How am I going to get a master's? She said, we own the school. We set our own criteria. And we can make the determination that your life experiences surpass that of a bachelor's degree require. Now, you just can't come in the door. We're going to give you some criteria to achieve. And if you achieve them, we'll let you in. And so they set up what they felt were the relevant criteria, including interviews and all kinds of stuff. I had to go take the GRE, and I had to make a minimum score on the GRE and that type of thing. And I had to, one of the conditions, I had to spend 1 semester at the Yard, which is the undergraduate school at Harvard, and I had to take 3 particular courses: a college quant, a political science, and an economic course. And I couldn't get less than an A in those 3 courses as part of my my precondition to get into graduate school. Well, to cut a long story short, I did all of that and I got into the graduate school. But the way they teach in the Harvard system and the Kennedy School is they don't just, you read articles or you read books and you write papers. They really take life cases from around the world. And I guess Harvard gets paid for some of that. And they actually put those cases before the students and you have to work to solve them as a group. And you get a group grade. So if the group fails, everybody in that group can fail. And if one person in the group dissents, then the grade will fall 1 because you're talking about, in a political environment, developing consensus, right? Figuring it out. And so by the time I got to Government House, and I think people saw what the results were when I went to the Public Finance Authority and working for Governor Turnbull, and how much we were able to achieve for Governor Turnbull. By the time I got to Government House, I was truly prepared to govern. And so when the disaster and the hurricanes and everything come, I knew that playbook well. But I think it was very fast-paced and a lot of pressure. So I don't take credit for all of it because some of it happened and it went right by me. But I think when I was successful in persuading the Congress, both Republican and Democrat, to amend the Stafford Act, which is used today, that provided so much benefit to the Virgin Islands, and get away from the business of fixing things as they were, but investing and strengthening. Because I tell them, I had the records and I said, okay, when Hugo came, this is how much you paid to rebuild the power system. When Marilyn came, this is how much you paid to rebuild the system. And the other storms, this is how much you paid. So if you want to rebuild it the way it was, this is how much it's going to cost you. Or if you spend X amount of billion more, we can harden it and we don't have this disaster. And the same thing with the schools and the hospitals and the homes. And there was no question, there was significant support, tremendous support for the people of the Virgin Islands for reconstruction of the territory's infrastructure.
So you're saying that you were able to convince Congress to change laws that would allow for a better rebuild of our
and that applies now across the nation. FEMA no longer fixes things as they were. Now they invest in strengthening the infrastructure and the facility so that when the next storm comes, they won't pay to redo it again. Right? So that's why you see all those $1,000 pools in the Virgin Islands. And, there was a plan to putting money to do new generation systems and wind and solar and get, again, more of the power underground. And when we build new housing communities, we weren't going to have overhead wires anymore. Everybody was going to be lit from the ground coming up, just like you are here on the mainland, because those are all mitigating factors to prevent the system from being destroyed in a storm. You restore power much quicker and you protect the infrastructure. But you got to do the work. It's all these things are about, the TV is good, the radio is good, making the speeches are good. But then when all that goes away, you and your team have to sit down and be able to make these resources become real to the territory so that the people can benefit from them. Even the roads are washing out and they're flooding and emergency vehicles can't get through. So what do? You get money to rebuild the roads now all by DOT standards, because now it's no longer paving and packing. You're putting in drainage systems so that the water can go. You're fixing the roads in a way that you're putting empty tube lines so that when somebody wants to come to put in a line for a cellular system or fiber optic, they're going to dig up the road. There's already culvert there and everything that's ready to house them. You just charge them and they run them right through. You put in sidewalks. You put in proper signaling. You put in reflectors in the lane so that at night people can see where they're going. And this protect the pedestrians and everything. But you're doing them all by DOT standards. So they asked me, made an offer that they would give us X amount of dollars that I could distribute through the business community for people who were damaged by the hurricanes. And I declined that. I said I didn't want to do that, because what happens is they give you the money, they tell you give it out, and then 3 years later they send the auditors and they say, oh yeah, but you give Redman $20, but he only qualified for 16. So we were back for somebody going to jail. And this body, and this one get $100, but you only give him $100 because of your friend. He should have get 70. I wasn't going to go through that.
Yeah.
What I asked them to do was, why don't we use that money? Because at that point in St. Thomas, we couldn't get the largest cruise ships and the new cruise ships coming out up to the docks because the draft was too shallow. So I asked them, why don't they give us that money so we can dredge the harbors, the complete channel, and the harbor in Charlotte and Mali, dredge the channel in Christiansted, and then use that money for that. And then they got the Army Corps of Engineers to agree that the spoils from the dredging, this massive dredging, they throw them off 5 miles outside of Puerto Rico, where the Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. government owns that, is responsible for that whole. So we didn't have to worry about where this material is going to go. Now I understand they're finally getting the dredging done, doing it, but that would have been an excellent opportunity to do during COVID because taxi drivers, they had no tourists to drive up and down the place. So people had trucks and heavy equipment that you use that money and those projects to supplant the economy and keep dollars flowing through the community and into people's pockets. So those are the type of things that I felt was important because you can't get to a modern day economy and life, education, and health if you have a broken infrastructure.
Yes.
You've got to get the entire infrastructure redone, and the hurricanes provided the opportunity for the federal government to be able to pay for it. Right?
And so who was responsible for the bridge to nowhere?
Well, the bridge to nowhere was built during the Schneider administration, but they hadn't yet acquired the land and do the development. Governor Schneider was a piece of the infrastructure that was going to be paid for by federal highway funds, and he wanted it done under his term. So it was done under his term.
But the nowhere part, and then like
you know who gave it the bridge to nowhere?
You?
I did. I was at a budget hearing as lieutenant governor, and I was talking about how we make haphazard decisions.
Who need friends?
I call it.
Who need friends? The lieutenant governor give it the bridge to nowhere.
I am the one who termed it the bridge to nowhere, and then it was in the headlines, and everybody started calling.
He could make a headline.
I tell you.
Well, yeah.
Daily News just to sit down and say, what Mapp say?
What Mapp say? Mapp talking. Go over there.
Well, again, I don't take credit for that. That comes from the lineage, the raising. Mrs. Hewitt, Mrs. Mapp, and Mrs. Abramson. And my uncles and all of those guys.
You served under two administrations, U.S. administration, Trump and Obama?
Yes.
Okay. Which administration was the more favorable administration to work with?
The one that called him the president of the Virgin Islands. What you talk about? Well, the first and only president?
Well, no, I'm a huge fan of President Barack Obama, and I'm not a supporter of President Trump. I didn't support him when he ran in 2020. He was good to the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
And personally, he was good to me. But there were two different times. I don't know if the Virgin Islands had the hurricanes at the time when President Obama was president.
Yeah, how that would
if I had been there, I suspect we might have been able to achieve many of the same things because we think it's big money, but in the scheme of the U.S., really ain't that big money. The issue in the United States and the federal government is the ability of the government of the Virgin Islands to take the resources and properly spend them, and that the people of the Virgin Islands benefit.
Yes.
And we were able to demonstrate to the federal government that we had the capacity, the capability, and was able to do that and safeguard that money.
Yes.
And so there were things that happened that helped. So when the president was dealing with the governor of Puerto Rico and the people of the Puerto Rico, he was a little bit disrespectful. And he did some shameful things. And so I think he turned and he saw me and he was very happy to say, well, but here's a black community and I'm very respectful and like black folks and respect them. So we became the beneficiary of it. And some black members of Congress was telling me, you need to be very careful with the president because he'll use you and spit you out. I said, well, actually, he'll use me because I'm trying to be friendly. And because, you can get caught up in that. And the media wanted to interview me about my relationship with the president and how did we become such good friends? And I would decline them because none of that would benefit the people of the Virgin Islands. I didn't want to be put on any stage. I had a call from the White House, from one of the special assistant to the president, who was concerned that Michael Bloomberg was scheduled to come into the Virgin Islands and have a big press thing with me. And so they wanted me to know that the president was very supportive of what my efforts were, but he was concerned that it's not the president himself saying this is one of his aides, that me showcasing Michael Bloomberg, he believed Michael Bloomberg is planning to challenge him. And I sort of had to pick and choose where I wanted to be in this environment. And I had to quickly explain to the aide that the Virgin Islands is completely decimated. I don't have any option to decide who to ask for help.
Exactly.
If Mr. Bloomberg is coming and his foundation is going to help the Virgin Islands, I have to accept that.
Exactly.
Right.
And I expect I have to come to the president and the White House to get the help from the federal government so the Americans living in the Virgin Islands can be restored.
Yeah.
I can't pick and choose that.
Yeah.
So he said, I'm going to get back to you. And about 2 hours later, he called me back and said, you do what you have to do. Do what you have to do. Because I couldn't go down that road.
Yeah.
Are you struggling with having bad credit? Is having a bad credit score affecting your ability to get approved for the things you need in life? Well, guess what? I could help you out. I could get all those negative items removed if we're talking about inquiries, late payments, collections, charge-offs, repossessions, even bankruptcies. We could get those removed from your credit report. Go on www.credible-source.com and fill out an inquiry right now so we could get you to a better credit score so you could get approved for the things you need in life. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
So I don't know, it's comparative to say that
One was better than
Trump
the other.
was better than the other. I think it's not only because we have to advocate for ourselves.
Yes.
And governors have to decide. It goes back to life. For me, you got to decide what side of the aisle you want to be on.
Yeah.
You either fish or fowl, and some people want to be everything, and they don't want to make anybody angry. And I when I went to the Congress, the one Republican senator who was chastising me about money for the Water and Power Authority and explaining how you people in the Virgin Islands and in Puerto Rico, you have all these people connected to the power and they're not paying and they're stealing, and now you're asking taxpayers on the mainland to foot the bill. And when he was finished, I had to ask Senator Murkowski for time on the chair to respond because you can't get away with that. I don't know what bush tea you drinking this morning, but but that's how I am.
Yes.
So and I had to enlighten him
Yes.
and explain to him it don't work that way.
Yeah.
And then these are the laws that are in place. And this is what the Water and Power Authority does is when we find people taking power. Now, I can't speak for Puerto Rico. I know they got big problem, and don't be putting us in the same boat and everything. And there were a group of Republicans headed by April Newland and a few others from St. Thomas that were up there lobbying the Congress as well for aid for the Virgin Islands. And when they got back to the Virgin Islands, they met with me and they told me, when we got to his office, he wanted to know who you were. And then we just explained, the governor, he's very straightforward and, this is the way he is and he's a good guy and blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, I don't like the way he responded to me. But that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You have to be an advocate and believe in what it is you're advocating for. And when people are trying to derail you, you're derailing me, you're derailing the people of the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, the Congress is responsible for the territories.
Yes.
And you haven't been fulfilling your responsibilities.
Yeah.
Don't come with a blame.
Exactly. So I got a question real quick, Red. So when during that time, I know Puerto Rico going through their whole turmoil and all of that stuff. And I think the governor of Puerto Rico was a Democrat at that time too.
I don't know. I'm not going to be good in answering that because I don't know. They do have Democrat and Republican, but they have another political shift that we don't use. They don't do the pro-stateholders and the non-stateholders. And depending on whether you're a pro-stateholder, then you're this party. And if you're a non-stateholder, then you're in. So I don't get confused like that. But he was Governor Rosselló's, the original Governor Rosselló's son that was governor at the time.
So I don't think, as far as I can remember, he wasn't a big fan of Trump and Trump wasn't a big fan of he during that time. And Trump were having issues with Puerto Rico as far as, the whole...
They had contracts that were given out that didn't make financial sense.
Yeah. So, and then I remember...
a number of members of the cabinet went to prison from that government also.
Oh, wow.
Because, they had a Secretary of Education we call them commissioners, but our Secretary of Education, when she came in, she canceled all of the contracts, and her husband was a builder, and she just gave them to
Oh
him,
my
and
gosh,
then
man.
they were able to tie the money directly.
Sound like a Virgin Islands thing too, but nobody going to jail over it. I don't understand
Well,
why.
I won't say that. I can say, without fear of dispute, that in the agencies that I ran and in my term as governor, I ain't even had nobody under me even investigated. And I've been the subject of maybe 8 federal and local audits. And while they talk about process and procedure, they never ask me where a quarter there.
Yeah.
So I can't sing that hymn with you.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
They're on their own.
That's to be
Don't
applauded.
sing it. I'm
Not
going
my
to sing it.
Virgin Islands.
Right.
Maybe the other Virgin Islands I vote for.
The one
That's
after
to
him.
be applauded.
And I am proud of that.
You should be.
You should be very proud of
And
that.
I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the people around
Around
me,
you.
the people that work with me, because we Sean Baptiste, I hope he don't get upset with me, is the owner of Marco and a very close friend. So is Bobo Bates, very close friends. And both of them will tell you that I don't call and tell nobody, probably give them this contract or give them that contract. I will tell them, folks, I will put in, I will bid. If somebody do something wrong or mistreat you or break the procedure or treat you unfairly, you're going to know my number. You call me and then I'll deal with it. But it don't make no sense for you to be a governor. And I'm going to tell you, Redman, well, you're his friend, so I'll make sure you get this $5 million deal, only for you and me to end up in prison.
I can't spend it.
What the hell is that? And then I sacrificing the people of the Virgin Islands, and you can't get a benefit.
But see, now these people don't fear repercussions in this time. You know what I mean? There's no repercussion in sight. Like we're seeing it happening, but we're not seeing any results. But that's another
Story.
for another time. My next question is, which is the elephant in the room right now in the Virgin Islands, and I want you to give me a history lesson on how we got here. Because people say it's been happening all the time, but I just can't ever remember a time me and Kyle ever went upstairs when it wasn't hurricane and the lights were off for hours.
12 hours at a time.
So educate us on WAPA, how we got here, and now
where do we go from?
here? It was some OG insight.
It's unfortunate, and it's not different than when we decide we're going to pay somebody to produce rum and get them all the sweets. Right? So when we had Cruiser Rum that was giving us almost $200 million a year, and we were putting in maybe $20 million for molasses subsidy, but we protected the industry. We let somebody who were getting 10 cents on the dollar in Puerto Rico come and almost get $5, $6 a gallon to produce rum, for which they don't have to pay for anything, including the rum plant, including the rum production. And then we give them all the sweets of the rum excise taxes, call them bonuses and proportional money. And the money for promotion, which minimizes $30 million a year, we don't even require that they shoot the advertisements in the Virgin Islands. So the scenes of the Virgin Islands are in the actual rum commercials. We're seeing scenes in Mexico and in Spain, and that
we pay for.
Paying for, right?
So as a novice, like when you just say that, not to cut you off, right? As a novice, when I hear that, not being a political person, not even being aware of the deal.
Did you finish Head Start properly? That's
right.
You only need to go Head Start
to figure out. The difference is, so now I have to ask, okay, so whoever helped them get a deal, you guys something on the back end.
Well,
because that deal don't work for the people.
I is a Methodist and you singing him in Catholic church, so I can only keep quiet. Okay. I don't know them here, right? But I am saying to you, so we back to WAPA. So we're going to do a propane conversion. At the time, propane clearly was cheaper than diesel. Nothing wrong in doing the conversion. But you take a deal that was estimated around 60 million, 75 million, and it ended up being a $200 and something million deal.
Okay.
And then by the time you get the conversion done, then
propane gone up.
Propane is more expensive than diesel.
Diesel.
And then not only do you do the conversion, you tie yourself to the person doing the conversion, supplying you the propane. So after you do the propane, you got this guy, you owe all this money for the project. No, you don't owe him all this money for the fuel. And then in the meantime, when I came into office, you're paying about 56, 57 cents a kilowatt hour. And I want you to think of your light bill here in Atlanta. And you will tell me what it is. But I want you to think of your light bill here being 5 times what it is every month.
Nice.
That's what the people are doing, because we were about 7 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour at that time. So if they're paying 50 cents, 5 times 10, 5 times difference, right? And they're running air
AC.
condition, right? They don't. What the light on and the sun up?
Yeah.
They
got to deal with none of
propane
that.
tank, or they're running the stove and the oven, right? And people drying their clothes online.
Yes.
All right. So
So
they paid about more than $1 billion invested in the Water and Power Authority, and they have the highest rates and the least stable power in probably anybody in this nation. Because you're not thinking. I remember when the first year I was governor, and I'm not making any asparaging remarks. I'm just giving you the facts. When Mr. Hugo Hodge, who was the executive director at the time, he called me and told me that the people from the company, and the name escapes me at the moment, they wanted to meet with me to discuss the conversion and the fuel issues, and that they're inviting me to dinner, and it could be any restaurant, whether in the Virgin Islands or on the mainland, whatever favorite place I want to eat, so they could introduce themselves and discuss the issue. And Hugo was in my office, and I turned to Mr. Hodge, and I call him Hugo affectionately, not with any disrespect.
Right.
Mr. Hodge, I turned to him and I said, I have a habit of doing this with people. I said, let me see if I understand what you just said. Because sometimes things are going this ear.
no, come on.
When again the oatmeal will send it back. I said, no. Some you ain't hear that right. So I repeat what he said to me. I said, now, but these people were doing a project. I ain't gonna use the number 70, 75. I think it was 60, but let's say 70, 75 million. At that time, we were like up to 180 million. They didn't complete the project, and they want to discuss the matter with me. And they want to invite me to dinner to my favorite. But this ain't no time for no food and party. I want to know what the hell they're doing with my money. Right? I called Rochelle Conero was my deputy chief in the office. She was, I think, a part of the meeting. And I said, you set an appointment with them, and I'll bring them up here to me because I want to know what the hell's going on with my money. I don't treat the government money as if it's my money. You know? So when you getting paid to do something and you ain't doing it, I deal with like you were building my house and you charging me for blocks, and I come and see you putting up plywood. Right? So they came and they've given me all kinds of excuses, and we need this change order and that change order. And, you know, it's a contract signed. WAPA is controlled by the board. It's controlled by the executive director. And you read the contract and you just shake your head. It's like the Diageo contract. They get all these benefits, but there's no requirement that they keep targets. So if they tell you we selling 4 million gallons of rum and you give them 30 million, and then 2 years later they sell 1 million gallons, you still give them 30 million. You have to perform, but they don't have to perform. And contracts like that can't help the people of the Virgin Islands. So what has happened, back to WAPA quickly, is that while the power is so expensive, everybody who can afford it makes a decision. I need to get off the system. And rather than charge people who are going on solar a mill rate for the conversion to solar, they give them the rack rate. So when you're doing the offset of what you produce in solar, they giving you the credit at the rate they charge in the consumer. You don't do that. You're going to really lose. You should be given a lesser amount because you remember you still got to pay for other generations. Even if 1,000 people come off the system, them generators still got to be cared for, maintained. You got to have fuel. You have your employees. You have your administrative costs. So you've had more than a third of the customer base, and I think it's probably closer to 40, 50% of the customer base of the Water and Power Authority leave the system and gone to solar or their own power supply, particularly the big users. So everybody else that's left on the system that's not generating those $10,000 and $20,000 and $30,000 a month bills, they now go pay for your administrative costs, your maintenance costs, your debt service costs on your machines. You can't keep the lights on.
Yeah.
And I wish the new executive director that recently installed the best. But the opportunity to get rid of the debt service machinery and go to completely paid for generating systems, solar and wind that the federal government was prepared to do and gave you over $1 billion to start. And then the Clinton Foundation and the Bloomberg Foundation that was going to put in several hundred more $1 million because you want to show here's a community in the United States that's 50% green as a community power supply system. You let time burn you out on that system. So I really wish the executive director the best because it can only help the people of the Virgin Islands.
Right.
So it's going to get worse before it get better.
So clearly we could see that.
So you mentioned the Bloomberg, you mentioned Clinton Foundation, you mentioned the federal government ready to invest all this money to build a more stabilized system to get us 50% green, right? That didn't happen.
It would have happened at that time, but what happened is the clock has ran.
Right.
So who's going to go back to do that now?
Yeah.
Right.
So we missed the mark.
I mean, I thought I don't know the accuracy of this, but I thought there was a discussion in the Virgin Islands recently about asking the Department of Interior for pay for some of the old.
So you do peaking.
Huh?
You ain't in just a retirement.
No,
you do kind of like peaking
you
a
notice
little
since
bit.
I sit in here, I keep pinching my leg.
Yeah.
It because itching, I try to turn the phone out.
Yeah.
Because it's I don't have to watch the newspaper or anything.
You know what we
You know.
And not even my friends. I have people that I don't know, they got my number. You know, the phone number that I have in my phone, when I return to St. Croix or the Virgin Islands after the Kennedy School, that's the same phone number I still have.
Oh, gosh.
I've been through 3 gubernatorial races with this number. I serve as governor with this number. And people say, yeah, but every other governor did change the number. I said, again, I come from Ratan. The kind of phone ring don't mean I go answer.
Yeah.
Right? So why I need to change my number. People all over the United States whose friends of mine been to school and people I go run them down to AT&T. Sorry, I'm a little older now, so the old people don't do this. AT&T sent me a notice the other day telling me I have to get rid of the 340 number because they sell the system to a new company. And after September 14th, I can't have this number. And I was having a conniption when I read that thing because I said, no, but I can't get rid of this number. I have at least 1,600 active contacts in my phone. I can't tell. And the lady was telling me, well, you have to send your contacts and you can't do a blast thing. It's only like 10 or something at a time. You could say, my number have changed. And then I realized that T-Mobile will let me change my number to 340, carry my 340. Ask AT&T if they can make any more money. Right? So that's how life is with me. People call and they tell me, and sometimes when they call and tell me, I say, but that can't be true. They tell me, yeah. And when you look, they send me email and all I can do is empathize. You know? But I think we had such a powerful opportunity. And unfortunately, going forward, any other administrations that come in when they go to the federal government and say, we need this, we give it to you and do nothing with it.
Right.
And the money don't sit there forever. It expires over time. The 10% share has expired. The 10% waivers have expired. So when you do any projects now, you have to demonstrate you have your share on the table.
So when you say, I just want to, because it don't make sense, like you say, it just don't make sense.
Disheartening.
I'm blaming nobody.
I want you to blame nobody.
You could text me and then I will say it out.
Me asking that. I just want to understand, like, so after Maria, we plead our case, the federal government give us...
The authorized projects for the Virgin Islands in terms of how you could spend money had reached $10.8 billion.
Okay.
We use the number 9, but the actual number was
10.8 billion. So that's more.
And I want done calling about money, because there was some discretionary money that HUD was going to give Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And there's a formula the federal government uses in splitting the joint pot between Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And I was making a conscious effort to get Secretary Carson to up the number for the Water and Power Authority without affecting the discretionary money that they were given to the Virgin Islands, because I didn't think that it was equitable the way he was distributing the money. So and he would smile because he saw me more than once. He says, "Is there any way that we would ultimately be able to satisfy you, Governor? Because you always make an additional claim." I said, with really all due respect, just give me what I asked for and I'll be fully satisfied. And everybody in the room laughed. Yeah. But he asked me, right? Yeah. If you don't want me to keep raising these issues. But you have to, the point I want to make is they don't just give you what you ask. Yeah. You have to make the case. And in some instances, we made the case. Yeah. And in some instances, they said, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's very unfortunate. Right. Like you see, we don't see it getting better before it gets worse. And
well, it's only because I'm not saying that because I'm trying to be pejorative or attack anybody. Yes. I'm saying it because logic is real life. Yes. And so when you look at the realities, the machines continue to get older. The cost of fuel isn't going to drop significantly. Really, yeah. People are still leaving the system and going to their own power generation systems. And so those people who are left, somebody going to make up the slack.
Yes.
So that it can't get better before it
gets worse.
So my next key issue, we talked about WAPA, we talk about Maria and the hurricanes. Particularly when it comes to
Let's talk about the healthcare system.
Huh?
Let's talk about the healthcare system.
The healthcare system?
Yeah, because we knew I was making a pitch when Speaker Pelosi and about 170 something members of the House and Senate came through the Virgin Islands. And we would take them through the infrastructure. And I remember when we would go through the Schneider Hospital and the Cancer Center, I would say, this is why we need the change in the Stafford Act. And we need to get these systems demolished and completely rebuilt. And folks were arguing with me that Darrell Smalls, he was the director of the maintenance at that time at the hospital, and he was kind of undermining and saying that there wasn't anything wrong with the subsystem, the infrastructure system of the hospitals. You could take out all the walls and everything, but the steel and everything was good, and we could keep that and build around it. And I kind of pulled him to the side and I said, Darrell, don't ask for a piece of a hospital. Every hospital that was built in the Virgin Islands, the federal government built them. From the 60s all the way through. The healthcare system that Governor Louis and Commissioner Roy Schneider got, the two hospitals and the clinic in St. John, 100% paid for by the federal government, every single one. And when Speaker Pelosi and members of the Congress would come through and she said, no, we need to knock this down and give you a new one. He trying to explain to them why you could save the old one. Anyhow, I put in for a new one. The Wang Louis Hospital was approved to be completely demolished and reconstructed. And I think the budget that they approved is close to $800 million. A completely new facility. Subsequently, I got a call from a senator since I've retired and left telling me that the folks from the Schneider Hospital was in front of the Senate and they were making a pitch to the government to put in the petition to knock down the hospital and put a new one, right? And a couple of the senators had called and asked me about it, and I smiled and I said, better late than never, but you ain't got to do nothing because that's already part of the petition. It's for the whole new facility, so they just need to do the work to be able to get that approved as well. I don't know if you remember, but when I was arguing about the new facilities, they were attacking me and saying the only reason I want to knock down the Schneider Hospital is because I want to take his name off of the building. Now, I tried to point out Omar Brown's fire station named after Omar Brown that was in the Fort Christian. They built the new one out by
Charlotte.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of the estate name.
Well, it's called Rot Standenberg.
Yeah, no, but they have another name for it.
Palibog.
Huh?
Palibog.
No, and then where the little mall is, where the court was.
Oh, Babel
Plaza.
Babel Plaza.
Yeah, but them little green buildings over there, my address was Rot Standenberg.
Yeah.
That's the only way he know that.
That's the only reason I know.
Well, when they built the new
Yeah.
Omar Brown fire station, Omar Brown name there,
Still on
they're
it.
knocking it down
Yeah.
and putting a new one doesn't take the
The name.
person's name off it. But it was campaign time, so that they couldn't come with anything better. But that's how petty we can get that affect the lives of the people, because you have excellent doctors and nurses and medical folks there, but they're hampered by an outdated infrastructure system
Yes.
in the process. And so many people, when they go to the doctor, when they have to have specialized care, they go get to the airport first.
Right.
And that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right.
It just shouldn't be.
Right. So, and that, like almost like a mind reader, because that was I was going to ask you about Wang Louis Hospital. Like, why is the dragging of the feet and to get a facility
But
up to snuff?
that's back to getting the work done. See, because there's no glory
Right.
in the process of getting the work done.
Right.
And literally, I would have put a commission together of private and public sector folks, including entities that have experience in designing and building hospitals, because you wanted to encapsulate a lot of associated healthcare costs that could be a part of the hospital, because today hospital isn't what it was when we built the original facilities.
Right.
Like, so if you had to have your gallbladder out when we built the original Schneider and Louis hospitals, you had to be in the hospital 2-3 days, and they would cut you and get the gallbladder out. Now they put probes in, take them out, and they stitch up and send you home. I had 80% of my stomach removed in 2022. They put me on a table. A robot, they brought the robot over to me. It's the anesthesiologist and the anesthesiologist nurse. And I see the doctor sitting by a tent. I think he's going to go have lunch. He said, no. I have to operate the robot from over here. They put me to sleep. I wake up. I have 3 holes, but they're explaining to me, don't lift anything heavy. You got to heal. You can't drink and eat like how you did before. They send me home the next morning. I'm an avid walker. I go out, I walk 1.5 miles. I say, okay. The next day I walk 3 miles. The next week I'm back to 6 miles. When I sit down to eat, I feel like all my food, I still trying to eat and drink iced tea like how I used to, but when I get here, I can't get it down, right?
Yeah.
So my sister-in-law watches me, no pain, nothing. So she decides to do the same thing. And here I am, 105 pounds lighter.
Right.
A lot of other things had to do, but
Right.
105 pounds lighter. But the point I'm making is that if I had did that surgery in the original time when Louis and Schneider hospitals were being built, I would have to go in, they would have to open up my stomach, do what they have to do, sew me up, and then put me up. So we don't use the facilities. Then medicine has so modernized. Even look now with people, you get a hip replacement. 2 weeks later, you could go to the dollar wine contest, right? So long ago, you had to go to 6 months of rehab, and you get a knee, and they're walking around. No, a week later, you 2 weeks later, you're good. You gotta be careful, but you're good to go. So we needed to design the facilities now, and the mere fact that the federal government said, okay, we'll pay for them. They don't want you. Because remember, we changed the Stafford Act. They're going to put them back the way they was. We'll put them back the way we need them. And you can't convince some folks that change is important.
Yeah.
So with all of these things between WAPA, healthcare, infrastructure, people.
You have 4 schools that before I left were approved for reconstruction.
I mean, I drive
Complete
past.
demolition.
Complete
Yeah.
demolition.
And we were going to qualify Charlotte O'Malley High School for complete demolition because we had a problem where
They tell me something it's in the flood zone and
no, but there was you'd see Charles. I don't know how to tell people these things. Because you got people think I live in La La Land, but I live in the real world.
Yeah.
Right.
I know I live in the real world.
right.
Charlotte Charles Howard Memorial Hospital is a pile of rubble. Getting a complete new health facility built there, modern. That built when Charlotte O'Malley High School built. So the mere fact that you could qualify that once you determined that it's structurally unsound and there was any impact, not 50%, 60%, 70%, any impact that the star made it structurally unsound, it qualifies. right? You say, you want the federal government pay for it? Better than charging you.
Exactly.
Right? How many of your sons have died in wars for this nation and don't have anything to show for it? How many of the people in the Virgin Islands have paid full Social Security rate and contribution per the law and can't get SSI benefit unless they move to the U.S. mainland, right? So you got to understand that the federal government give you nothing. You ain't asking for nothing. You've earned these things.
Yeah.
You're a full part of this nation.
Yeah.
We building countries when there's no contribution to the taxpayer base of the United States.
Yeah.
You are a part of this country. We're Virgin Islanders, but we're Americans. And that's the argument I went to the Congress with.
Yeah.
I think people said, but every time you talk to them, you tell them about Americans. Well, can't we Virgin Islanders? I said, no. That guy Friday, he know about a Virgin Islander. He know about an American. And when I talk to him about veterans and their sacrifices and what Americans in the Virgin Islands are doing and what they're entitled to, he understand that.
Yes.
And that's what we have to accept as Virgin Islanders. We're not second class people.
Yes.
I know I ain't. I tell people I voted all kind of presidential election.
Yeah.
Anytime there's election, I got pen out, I ready to vote. Me care where I live.
Yeah.
Right? And people, but you only supposed to do this and that's the world you live in.
Yeah.
Right.
See? And we have to get away from that.
Yeah.
We really have to get away from that.
Yeah.
Right.
I tell them, I don't plan to dead no time soon, but when I dead, well, I done gave instruction they could cremate me, but I would throw my foot over the back so they don't close it.
Yeah.
Because you have to live with that spirit in your life that there's nothing unachievable, right? And if it is due and owing, you can make the case for it,
Yes.
right? And so that's how I saw my role in the entire time I served the people of the Virgin Islands in all of the capacity. When I was in the small consumer services department as the director, people didn't know they were eating expired food that they were taking off the shelves in the supermarket in the States. They were shipping them to the Virgin Islands and charging you the full price. We removed baby aspirin that had expired 12 and 14 years that was still on the shelves. They have no impact on when you give it to the child, there's nothing there to help the child. And so when I would take them off the shelf and the law says the minimum you could find them is $25 or the maximum is $100, I send a memo out. Every time I pick up an old food, charge them $100. Even if it was a loaf of bread. And then when some of the senators will call and say, but you destroying the businesses. I say, well, if the businesses
Destroying the
have to
community.
survive by
Exactly.
poisoning me, they
Exactly.
shouldn't be destroyed.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to come to a point in your life where you say enough is enough.
Yeah.
And so when in all of the different capacities I served in, I try to make my existence in these jobs benefit the community. I don't have to know each person who get a benefit. I have to know that the majority of the people of the Virgin Islands are getting the benefit. That's why they have me in the job, and that's how I served, and that's how I did my career. And again, I'm humbled,
Yes.
I'm honored, and I'm very thankful for the opportunities that the people of the Virgin Islands gave me. But I made it my business to give them my all. And if I had to cuss about road here or there or wake somebody up or pitch the behind through a window, well, that's for the benefit of the territory.
People, yeah.
That ain't because I like pitching people through window, but you're in the way.
In a way.
So you gotta move.
So
You can't go over everybody. Sometimes I go through a few.
Yes.
Right? And nobody don't ask me who I was sleeping with no more. I couldn't help myself. I had to throw that in.
Hey, so.
Right.
But
I know we've been here a while. So.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
We got time. We got
So-
time.
But go on.
No, because we were talking about Charlotte.
Right.
And the school. Not
That
just,
Yes.
school could qualify under Irma and Maria. That school was, we were underway. I take some responsibility too. I do accept some responsibility that I got in my way why I didn't get a second term. I think I didn't approach the re-election. I did the standard thing a lot of politicians did. You have so much achieved under your belt. We got the refinery open. We got 4,000 jobs back. We did an excellent job in profit sharing with the refinery, not these silly 2 cent and 5 cent fees that would have, realized millions of dollars, not only to the territory, but we wanted to infuse money into the GRS. And I think I kind of got in my way, knowing that I achieved, that we in the administration, we achieved so much. Albert Potter was a great guy. And I just became more and more me, and some people couldn't really deal with that. So I think I was part of the problem why I didn't get that second term.
You didn't lose because of what you accomplished or didn't accomplish. You lost because the other side ran a campaign on your character and misinformation.
And my style. I mean, because
Well,
people really would, you're too hard.
But did you get the job
you're
done?
too rough.
Did you get the job done?
I don't be real with you.
And so and they had real interest. I mean,
we have a nice guy in there now.
And that's what I'm about to
It's
say.
really sweet.
So this is what I'm about to tell her right now.
I
So
know about it.
me and he, right? We have the same vision,
Yeah.
but our approach,
Yeah.
night and day.
Yes.
Right.
Night and, we could have the same message.
But I don't mind if my successor and I had the same vision and our approach were different because we'd have been marching to the same goal.
exactly.
Clearly, I know I wearing glasses so I could see better. I ain't got nothing else to say. Okay? But I know we ain't got the same vision. I'm not saying whose vision is good or whose vision is bad. I know when my eye get cloudy, I went to the ophthalmologist and
I'm trying to bring us to this point, right? Is that I don't even blame government anymore. I blame us, the people of the Virgin Islands, inability.
Have a right to choose who they want to manage their affairs.
Right, but we're not choosing off of accomplishments.
We're choosing off of feelings.
We're choosing off of feeling and God,
He
Mapp
make me
too
feel
rough
better.
for
I mean,
he that deliver it different.
One of the lawyers in the Virgin Islands who specializes in IDC, EDC benefits, right? When I go into the office, I would see, I was the assistant director of the Industrial Development Commission, the predecessor of the Economic Development Authority, EDA. And so I'm very familiar with what tax benefits mean and what the exchange of value for tax benefits ought to be. And it's a balancing act because you have to be careful of in what business you're giving tax breaks, because if you decide that you and I are friends and you have a restaurant and I'm going to find a way to give you a tax break, something in the back of my brain have to say, but every other restaurant, when they hear you don't have to pay your taxes, you're going to want to pay theirs. And ultimately, somebody have to contribute for the functioning of government.
Yeah.
So when I would see these packages come before me and I would look for the quid pro quo, meaning what is the ratio of benefit they're providing to the community for the ratio of benefit we're giving them in tax breaks, and in some there were absolutely none.
Yeah.
And I would disapprove them. That became one of the issues in the community. Now, I don't mind the lawyers getting up and saying, I casting them money. The client paying them whether the benefit is approved or not.
Right,
But if I disapprove a benefit, I don't just say disapprove. We put, this is why it's disapproved. And if they could meet those criteria, then obviously they qualify.
Yeah.
But they made that a campaign that I don't disapprove people tax exemption. And I got people in the community who are going to benefit by my disapproval chanting with them. And I like, well, look me cross. I don't know if I use that word, but that's the kind of reaction. It's the same thing when we had decided to put taxes on cigarettes and alcohol. We were the only jurisdiction in the nation that had a minimus pennies on cigarettes and tobacco. I mean, tobacco and alcohol.
Yeah.
And one of Governor Paiwanski's grandson had let me know that they had promised him they won't never see the day when those items would be taxed. Well, you have to be out your loony mind. If you didn't put them, minimum 1,600 government workers would have to be sent home. Rather than tax rum and tobacco. Now, I don't know that tobacco has been approved by the FDA as a healthy item. And I don't know if drinking rum has been designated as a healthy item.
Yeah.
So it's not, they don't have no nutritional value. So you ain't have to have them. So why are you quarreling with me telling me that the average person will be able to afford a bottle of rum? What the hell are senior citizens worry about affording a bottle of rum or a carton of cigarettes? If you want to smoke, I come to the mainland. If I want to buy a beer and the beer is $9, if that's what they're charging me and I want a beer, I don't pay the $9. Right? So in the Virgin Islands, if the beer is $2 and by the time I put a tax on it, it's $3.50. If you want to drink beer, it's $3.50.
Yeah.
But the government must function. The same thing when we put the tax on the the folks who have timeshares. The timeshare industry come up with a scheme to get the government to approve the Timeshare Act, where a person who spend 1 week in a timeshare pay $27 as a property tax. Now, when you go to the Ritz-Carlton timeshare, it's $9,000 for the week. Now, how I go explain to somebody who is a teacher getting $30,000 a year that I have somebody flying into the border and spend $9,000 just to sleep in this condo, and they will get $27 out of it. And they're driving on the road. If they need the police, if they need fire, if they need the hospital, they go, and I am responsible for taking care of them. And they, for their week, they leave me, the government of the border, with $27.
After they spend $9,000.
And they leave Ritz-Carlton, who get the 9, and then this body get their piece of the 9. And 9, 1 week is only 1 out of 4 in the month.
Yeah. Oh,
and
gosh.
then they will tell you Easter and Christmas, they get twice as much for the same accommodation. And then you take that over to Frenchman Reef, who maybe isn't 9,000, but it's 4,000, and on and on and on. And so you say that this can't work, right? And the business community is right. They should oppose any taxes on their commodities, right? But at the end of the day, you have to find the balance in the community so that I don't need to tax you property tax, tax you gross receipt tax, and you pay to bring tourists to come to the Virgin Islands. What is that?
Yeah.
And that's what we were practically doing.
Right.
We were subsidizing the industry, and then we said we don't charge them a hotel occupancy tax, but we'll spend all that money advertising to bring them in, which we should do. But I live in Florida. You live here in Georgia. All these trucks and vehicles that are running on the highways and the byways, they're going to leave piece of money behind.
Yeah.
And they only pass through, and that's what everybody does. So the Virgin Islands shouldn't do it any difference. And it is those revenues that really help save the Virgin Islands through the pandemic, when you didn't have a lot of tourists and everything visiting and spending money.
Right.
Yeah. And also the 8% cut, right?
We restored that, $63 million. We used the infrastructure tax to fund because the employees won their case in the Third Circuit. So I sent a bill down, called it the infrastructure tax on the timeshares, is what funded the payment to return the government employees their 8% cut. Everybody who lost their money. And every contract that Oswald Potter and I signed, every collective bargaining agreement that we signed in the 4 years we were in office, we paid them. We implemented them. And also, remember, when we did the deal with the refinery, we were able to pay the ones for John Dion. Right? And the income taxes that were owed to the territory, the income tax refunds. So I think our administration, with the hand we were dealt when we arrived, we did a tremendous job for the territory as a whole, looking out for the territory really as a whole. And I'm proud of the service that we did.
Yeah. But like going back to what we were talking about the people being so, they act off of emotion, they act off of feelings.
That's true. And in any I remember a reverend in St. Thomas who had a group that met with me and Potter when we were running, and he got our commitment that we would not send any legislation. We would not send any legislation to the legislature to advance same-sex marriages in the Virgin Islands. And we totally agreed. And I hadn't given this any thought until I had met him at the campaign trail when the Supreme Court ruled. And we had a couple of cases in the Virgin Islands where people were trying to put their spouse who had gotten married on the mainland on health insurance. And because the Virgin Islands didn't recognize same-sex marriage, they couldn't do that. But once the Supreme Court ruled, all those laws fell to the wayside. And so to get rid of the litigation, I issued an executive order basically telling all the employees of the government, and, this is the ruling of the Supreme Court, and we have no choice but to abide by it. And he dressed me down on the campaign trail and let me know that I had promised to stop anything from happening with same-sex marriages. And I said, but you were there on the platform when I had to put my hand on a Bible and raise my right hand. And I promised to defend and obey the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States as they pertain to the Virgin Islands. And the rulings of the Supreme Court pertain to the Virgin Islands. What it is you would expect me to do. Fight! And all I could do is wish him a good day and walk off.
Yeah.
You know? And so people that have divergent interests and views, you can't get mad with them if they're passionate in their views. You gotta just keep it moving.
Yeah.
So I am mad with people for their views. I'm mad with people for their lack of interest up until it happens to them.
Yes.
That's why I'm mad.
That's how you get. That's how people they'll pique their attention when they get the
It
problem.
has to happen to them first.
yes.
You know what I mean? And I want to know at this juncture in the Virgin Islands, like how much more have to happen for you to take interest in politics and policies that govern the Virgin Islands that impact us, for you to like just be standing aside and ignoring it. Like,
Because for the longest, we voting for people based on who got the biggest jamming,
right?
who got the biggest
Fish fry.
You know what I mean? As opposed to the policies. And then, Governor, you just mentioned a bunch of things that you've accomplished, you and your administration. And when it came to your re-election, that should have dominated the conversation, but it didn't. The SETI foul is what dominated the conversation. The I live with your mother is what dominated the conversation.
And so that's why I take responsibility for some of that loss, because I added that in the mix really unnecessarily.
Yeah.
You know, what really got me, and again, here's a piece that's in the book that I shouldn't be given, but
We appreciate
I could take a tongue lashing from my nephew.
Yeah.
Okay, could only be so intense.
Nephew.
But I really got very conflicted when they raised the issue about the care for my mom. Because my mom really sacrificed. And obviously we were taking care of my mom before I was governor. But there really was no way for me to serve as governor and care for my mom at the same time. So we brought a lady in who had been my mom's caregiver, but had also been an employee of the Department of Human Services that cared for seniors, to provide care for my mom Monday to Friday on an 8-hour period. And then we still paid her for the weekend work, and her daughters did an excellent job caring for my mom. And the reason people raise that, well, yeah, but the government shouldn't have been paying for that. And I got very conflicted about my commitment about the Virgin Islands in that moment, because it was Governor Paiwanski who got the law passed as a deal with Earl B. Otley, that he could use government workers to take care of his home and provide in-house services at his personal residence. And Earl B. put in the statute on the condition that it only comes from the governor's budget. And every governor since then had people on their payroll that deal with those kinds of affairs, not necessarily caring for your mom, but whether they cook for them or whether they take care of their personal business, because the business of government, you can't go down to the post office and do things and go to the bank and all those kinds of stuff. And I couldn't fit that in any way. And I won't say what my predecessors done in using that statute before me, but I could not bridge the gap mentally with how taken aback I was when people were assailing me for having a caregiver take care of my mom. And that statute was used after I left office to have caregivers for puppies, for poodles. Wow. And I can go on, but it raised no objection in the community. And I would say to folks that were close to me, and they would, Governor, you go calm down. I would say, if the people of the Virgin Islands want me to choose between Government House and my mom, they have to understand they ain't gonna take no decision from me.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna have to think about that. Yeah. Because my mother really sacrificed for us as children to get us who we were. And I knew we made a commitment that we were going to give our mother the best life she had, and she was struggling with Alzheimer's and dementia. So, we had to care for her, and I was going to care for her. Yeah. We didn't spend government money in that care other than having the caregiver, but I just couldn't believe how some people had reacted. But it was just another thing to say, I'm opposed to your re-election.
Yeah. So, and that's why, like me and him, we go at it a lot because, again, we get the same vision our approach to get it sometimes be different. So I'll tell him, I said, bro, I want you to think about where we trying to go. Yeah, but these man, this and that. I'll be like, yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with you, you know. But if we know that this is how they are, and if we know that this is where we're trying to go, and this is what the message we're trying to convey, let's convey it in a way that don't distract from the objective, you know? So we still got a lot of work to go.
No, so that's why I took a
I could have
liking.
learned a little of that.
That's why I took a liking to you, because like I ain't coddling you.
Yeah,
You grown.
yeah.
You live in reality, or
Yeah.
you want me to like give you the fantasy?
And I think that was my reality, that there was no need to coddle the
Coddle,
people of the
yes.
Virgin Islands. And
right.
people, some folks were just raising issues that weren't issues.
Even issues,
Just to distract.
Yes, yes.
And for me, the old colloquial ways was the best way to handle that. I mean, I had a senator, which I mean, it's all part of the process. These
Yes.
aren't criticisms, but I had a senator that kind of took me to task, because when I was doing the briefings, and FEMA does a report in there. FEMA as a school, and they talk about a lot of the ways the Virgin Islands had reacted to Irma and Maria as examples
Yes.
of what other officials should be doing in their communities.
Yeah.
I did not know until I read it in their material. We had 67 consecutive briefings after Irma and Maria to the community. And I had a senator give me I would say a plausible C- tongue lashing, because they didn't know how to give no tongue lashing, but a plausible, because I used the term concubine in one of the briefings.
Yeah.
And I that was in response to the rise in the domestic violence that we were having when we had the curfews, because it was very clear that you had people who were married and living in the same house who didn't like each other. And some of them were sleeping in cars right outside their door in their own driveways and stuff. And so when we would give, and this is all jovial, when we would give a break or move the curfew forward and say, okay, well, the curfew won't be 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, it'll be 2 o'clock in the morning. You got time to spend some time with your concubine and calm down, And people say, you answer that.
Yeah, oh God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that's
Such a bad politician.
You know what I mean?
Oh
your
my
your
God.
policies are so bad because
Yeah, it's
you
like
use the word
everything
concubine.
that you do that were righteous and good for the people, they forget all about that because you said concubine. This
that's
is who
what's
we.
up. Yeah.
So I had a struggle with it, because I come from a time where it's like I just don't remember us being this thin skin.
Yeah, and the soft.
Like what happened?
Yeah.
We are
But I have to use
people who that.
President Biden's term. Don't try to compare me to the Almighty. I ain't running for the Almighty. Compare me to the alternative.
Yes, yes.
And I, of course, I didn't know that lesson when I was running
Yeah,
for
right,
re-election.
yeah.
But it is all part of the life richness.
Yes.
And I have no regrets.
Yes.
And I have no bitterness or no
Yes,
anger
yes.
or anything. I think, the good Lord knows what the good Lord is
Exactly,
doing, what he's doing. And at the end of the day, I think I know that I can hold my head up and really be proud of my public service to the community, and be
Yes.
proud with the people that work with me
Yes.
to make the things that have happened in the Virgin Islands happen. And I think Mr. Senator Johnson was saying it on the floor. I think that right after the next administration, I think 5 of the people from my cabinet or my senior staff are in the legislature, and there's 2 more running again this year. So
Right.
that's going to be very interesting to see, which means that, those folks learned a lot, and what they brought to the table, they're sharing with the community, and the public likes that.
Yes.
Well, actually, a more lighter question, and it's probably going into like our bag and stuff like that. But yeah, it's things that I always wanted to ask him. Past and present, who are your favorite politicians?
Past and present favorite politicians. That's a diversity of discussion.
Right.
Clearly, I was a student of. Let's start with that. Melvin Evans. Clearly, Cyril King. Clearly, Juan Francisco Louis. I really enjoyed Charles Turnbull. From the Senate side, Elmo Roebuck was a champion, was my older brother. When I first went in the legislature, the 15th, I was in my 20s, and I think he was in his 40s. And I had trust on Barwar on the floor, and he came over and put his arm around me. He said, no, how we don't do this in here. And he got me under his wing, man.
Story
explained
of
to
your
me,
life.
you don't even need to go there. Your ability to debate is so you ain't need that. Don't how you gonna distract and you know. And then he really became a big brother to me. Randall James, obviously, I spoke of him earlier. Ann Abramson was one of the first people with females in the municipal council, obviously with Lucinda Millen and Bertha Bushulta and so. But you know, you're talking about people that affect me that I really admire, and there are others. I'm getting in trouble because I'm now trying to put all those names together. People don't always ask me that, but a number of them, inside and outside of politics. You know, I was a great admirer of Ruby Rouse. Ruby Rouse, Senator Rouse, and I didn't see eye to eye because I was a diehard Wang Louis guy, and she and her good friend Jessica Tatine Molinar, Mrs. Molinar, they really used to be on Wang Louis' case, Governor Louis' case. And when I was no longer, I had to leave, by the way, his service as his security when I became president of the union because I became so controversial with the police commissioner. And he said, every morning, look the headline, you in Otis Felix ass. And that's my commissioner. And then you're opening the door for me to get in the car and go in the office and come to the house. People want to know, well, you ain't talking to me about what going on in the police department. I ain't doing that. You got to decide whether you want to be security or you want to be the union president. You can't do both. I asked him for some time to think about it and took a couple of days and sat with him and explained that, you know, they came to me and they had asked me to serve as president. And I really agreed. And I couldn't now turn my back on them. And that I was still a loyal friend and supporter, but I needed to go back and serve as president. And then he ended up campaigning for me to become senator as well. So, you know, but there were a number of them. But Ruby Rouse, she was a character. She was fierce. She was a battle axe. She was a lovely lady. She had a rough style. If I think I was rough, Ruby Rouse was rougher than me, but she was good. She knew her politics, and I admired her and liked her a lot.
Awesome. So
present, don't escape the present, past and present, active.
You mean active?
Yeah, not like active currently, but you know, in this time, after your time, no, that's out there now. Who you like, how they deal with their politics or how they go about their politics.
You know, there are
it's not an endorsement of them.
Well,
but, it's going to come out that way for
it isn't going to be seen anything but that, and so it's really part of my hesitancy because I really don't kind of want to leave folks out, but I really like the way Franklin Johnson handles himself as a senator. I really like Milton Potter's style. Samuel Carrion is more sort of on the quiet side. I mean, these are people, you know, close to me that are in the active politics, but there are people that are not in the legislature that's active, that I see getting active, that I like. I think Clifford Joseph is going to do really very well. I liked Kurt Vielle. We were friends, and you know, he's just a stand-up go-to guy. I really appreciate him. And there are others. I don't want Eugene Farrell. I like him. He's just getting started, so there's a bit there of learning. But I'm really hoping for the best for him. And I'm sure if you call some names, I can speak to that. But there, you know, I didn't expect that question. So this is one of the few moments in 68 years that I'm almost speechless.
You get stumped.
Awesome, you get stumped. So we could call names and you could elaborate. Can I call a name?
Well, let's not do that. If I might have to be gratuitous because you called the name.
Yes.
That's not fair.
I got you.
You know, that's not.
I like the answer without me calling the names.
Yes,
the ones
I
that come to
appreciate
the one that come to mind and stuff like that, right? Because if we call names, then we get into another whole long discussion, and you know, I don't want it to be about that. It's really about you.
So we have Sarah Lee King Airport, named after Sarah Lee King. Roy Lester Snyder Hospital, named after Snyder. Juan Louis Hospital, Charles Turnbull Library. Bill was proposed, so name a highway after Kenneth Mapp.
Yes, it's now law.
It's now law.
Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You deserve it. Well deserved.
So the Senate already override
Yeah,
the
that
veto?
don't happen. Yeah. We know that won't happen.
Thank you.
So-
It
so-
should happen.
so-
I didn't know it was going to happen.
Sorry. I mean, but so that's what I wanted to speak on as far as like the tradition of governors endorsing former governors, whether we agree with their politics or not.
I think on a bill, not whether they're governors or not, was the first one in the history of the Virgin Islands to get vetoed. And listen, I ain't arguing nobody to say thank you and I appreciate you. When you do, again, Mrs. Hewitt, Ratan, when you do for others, you don't do it because you need, the first thing you don't tell people, you don't remind people what you do for them.
Yes.
I have very close friends and family that I have helped, obviously, over the years, and we get arguments. And I don't believe in the business of throwing things in people's face. Well, I had done this for you. So I ain't getting in no debate or discussion with people about somebody, a bill to say thank you and to honor you for your service. The governor's reaction is the governor's reaction. Unfortunately, it wasn't consistent because first it was money, and then it was, but he a Democrat, and so you gotta leave. You got to leave smallness where smallness is. Yes. I remember when we were, after Governor Evans had lost his first term, he had ultimately run for Congress. And he won because Ron DeLugo was challenging Governor Louis for his seat for the government house. And Ron lost, and so Governor Evans got elected to Congress.
Are you struggling with having bad credit? Is having a bad credit score affecting your ability to get approved for the things you need in life? Well, guess what? I could help you out. I could get all those negative items removed if we're talking about inquiries, late payments, collections, charge-offs, repossessions, even bankruptcies. We could get those removed from your credit report. Go on www.credible-source.com and fill out an inquiry right now so we could get you to a better credit score so you could get approved for the things you need in life. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
And when we were running for his second term in Congress, Ron DeLugo was now running back for his seat. And I like to get on the radio, and I could write a speech and get on the radio. And so they used to call, and I give Ron DeLugo credit for his many years of service in the Congress for the people of the Virgin Islands. I'm not trying to take that away. But it's the history of his life in the Virgin Islands before he was in Congress. And he used to imbibe quite frequently, and in them days, they didn't have designated drivers. So sometime when you reach for your car door and there was a gut carry on a sidewalk, if you fall and you had over imbibed, you might end up sleeping there. And so I was writing this speech to encapsulate. You see how carefully I choosing my words?
I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
I feel like Sesame Street today. And you get imbibe, you get minutia, you get so much, and I go back over and
really take your time. I had encapsulated his pre-congressional life in a speech, and I was sharing it with Governor Evans because I was going to go out and put some blows on it, right? And Governor Evans said, no. We're not doing this. And he teared the speech in half and he handed it back to me. He said, we're not doing this. I said, yeah, but that's the life. And he said, young man, let me explain something to you. When you wrestle with a pig, even if he ends up on the dinner table, when you get up, you're still full of mud. Leave that alone. And so you have to get to a point in your life where you say, you know what? I don't need to take that on. And so I am not going to assail or demean or disrespect Governor Bryan for any action he took. The legislature intended to thank me on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands for my service, for which I'm grateful to the people of the Virgin Islands for allowing me to serve. And he disagreed with the effort, and the legislature had the final say and unanimously voted to override the veto. And so no need to.
And I understand. I understand that his reasoning was because it wasn't in the budget, and I found it funny that all of a sudden
we so concerned about budget.
No, you could count money. You know what I mean? So this is just me and not Governor Mapp.
I thought his comments on the airways, the vitriol that he expressed,
go ahead and hear that,
was unfortunate. And I don't know how a measure like that would generate such hateful rant. And I'm not on the political stage, and I have no
Right.
intention of getting on the political stage, and say that my contributions to the territory were significant and many, but then liken me to helping folks in a disaster area about whether we should spend $45,000 on a former governor who left you $10.8 billion versus money to aid disaster.
Grenada.
I mean, I'm a nationalist. They send money to Grenada or wherever other country they send money to. Like, cool. We could be good Samaritans, but
The one
I'll
has
take out my
nothing to
people
do-
first.
One has nothing to do with the other, and one doesn't preclude the other.
Right.
And I'll tell you the semantics of the statute,
Mhm.
the semantics of government. The legislature can only authorize the expenditure of money. Only the executive could actually spend the money.
Right.
So, and the money was being allocated or appropriated to cover the cost of implementing the statute. So if you did the analysis and determined that you needed 10 signs for the street or 20 signs for the street, and they only cost $20,000, that's all you could spend.
Right.
They ain't got no party attached to it. They ain't got nothing to attach to it. And if you decide, well, which is only consistent with his remarks, that I ain't gonna implement it, let the next governor implement it, then you don't spend anything. So there was no mature reason other than hate, pettiness, immaturity to say that someone shouldn't be honored for their over 40 years of service to the community and selfless service, because I can't, there is no instant that anyone could raise that I sacrifice the interests of the people of the Virgin Islands for my own benefit. Absolutely none
Yeah.
in over 40 years.
Well, you say earlier, not one investigation under any of your
Right.
your
Now ask me,
tenure?
and in the PFA, I managed of cash billions of dollars. And when they did the audit, I remember when I was going to testify against the Diageo bill, I don't know if he sent the person, but a person came to me to let me know that the then governor said that if I testify against the bill, he will release the audit they did on me in the PFA. I said, you want me? I said, I don't want to bring message to go carry it. And then I send them back with a message that feel free to release it.
Yeah.
Because when the board did its closeout of my service, we had, you could invest the proceeds of the Public Finance Authority, the bond proceeds, in investment instruments. But because they're tax-exempt bonds, you can't earn more than the interest that you pay on the bonds. So you can net zero the bonds and then you're supposed to be using them to build your projects, but if it's taking time, you can net zero the interest cost. And we were so successful in the 4 years of the interest we didn't capture on the investment of those proceeds during the people that were managing the PFA before me. We were able to recover all those interest costs plus the interest costs during my time, that when I left the PFA, there was $1.8 million in excess revenues that we had to turn over to the Department of Treasury, the Office of Public Debt. You have to pay that money out. And then they'll watch your debt over the next 10 years. And if you have losses, they'll rebate you back the money, but you can't make beyond that because it's called flooding the market.
Yeah.
And while the Governor Turnbull and the PFA, after I left, had to turn that money over, it was amazing when about my 9th month when I was governor, here came somebody from the Treasury wanted to see me, and they brought the check because there were losses during the term before me.
Yeah.
They had clean out the investment portfolio and dump all the money back in a regular account. So they had lost, and they brought me back the 1.8 because that was an excess deposit that we had. And obviously that was government money.
Wow. Wow.
I thought we covered quite a bit.
Yes,
did.
we have. We're gonna touch the money bag now.
The money back.
Okay, so
we have this segment. Go ahead.
We have a segment called the money bag segment.
Okay.
Guys, this is the Caribbean Currency Show, and where we combine financial literacy with Caribbean currency, right? Caribbean culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we just got a few questions, Governor, real quick. It's gonna be light. This ain't gonna be heavy.
This is
This is light.
and but if
Answer wrong.
answer wrong,
Could be
it
kind of
could
heavy.
cost you.
What?
Yeah, I know, you understand. You figure it out.
So
Don't worry.
we gonna call out. We just have preference. We go
Right.
pick two things and then you choose the one you
You say crucian, right? Starting to that? Okay, cool.
All right.
Okay.
I good to go.
All right,
Okay.
here we go. All right, you want to go first, Red, or?
Yeah. Vayo or Jamban?
My preference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Jamban still plays on my musical,
Okay.
my playlist.
Yes, sir.
There you go.
There
There we go. There we go.
I hear that crucial.
Yeah, I had a crucian.
Okay,
Big
I
Jamban.
get one for you too.
Okay.
But I thought you were asking me for the money back.
No. We
Oh,
don't
that we
memorize
call it the
man.
money
We
bag,
call it the money bag.
but
Oh,
we have
okay.
the question in our
Memorize
head.
it, man.
Yeah.
It's just an extra step
Yeah.
to put them in there to read them. We don't know.
Yeah.
So, Stanley and the 10 Sleepless Nights or Milo and the Kings?
Well, actually both, because they're two different genres of music.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Milo and the Kings in New York, when they would come up, my mother and her sisters would go to the dance.
Yeah.
And you know, in those days when you go to the dance, you get to carry your own alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't carry mixes. You buy the mix from the hall,
Mm-hmm.
or you could bring your own, you had to bring your own bottle.
Yeah.
And my mother and aunts would cook Johnny cake and chicken wing.
Yeah.
But they would dress sharp. I actually have one of those pictures of my mother and her aunt dressed up going to a Milo and King.
Okay.
Milo the King dance
Yeah.
in the Savoy
Yeah.
in New York. Stanley and the Tap side. Do anybody have you have my phone number?
Yes.
Dial my phone.
Oh, okay.
Just dial my phone. You asked me about Stanley and the 10 Sleepless Nights. So I just want him to dial my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call me asking me nothing because I get Governor Mapp number. In.
Okay.
So my ringtone is my ringtone is a quadrille.
Okay.
I am a big fan of Stanley. It's on my playlist.
Yeah.
This particular one is James E.
James E.
Yes.
Okay,
This is
okay.
James
So,
E.
okay, hats off, Stanley. then.
I even have Lash and Dog in my playlist.
Yes, sir. I only suppose it. You know what
And you know
Nothing.
Lord Nelson who sing King Lear?
No.
You're not familiar with the song King Lear? When the guy won the competition for being the best liar?
How would I go?
For
You could sing it
Lord
for us.
Nelson?
Mm-mm.
Well, he did a piece. He's still alive.
Right.
He did a song the other day with Kes.
Right.
Mm.
Okay.
We Ting. And
We Ting.
I mean, he's got to be in his 80s.
Yeah.
Right on the
Yeah.
sidewalk, and they had some young girls
Okay.
next to him, but he could only like hide some
Yeah.
legs. You know, he there in that part of like where he could only tell you where he used to go. To.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Rainbow Beach or Megan's Bay Beach?
You've loaded these things up so inappropriately because Rainbow Beach are nice, but it cannot compare. There are beaches around the world that can't compare to Megan's Bay Beach.
No.
I
We
mean,
just
it's
want
just-
to put you in a pickle.
No, I mean,
You still gotta fly back home,
I could say, well, I could go St. John and they might have a beach that could give Megan's Bay some competition.
Uh-huh.
But when you say Megan's Bay and Rainbow,
Yeah.
oh Lord,
Come
man.
on, man. If it.
I know crucials I
Now,
would
if you
swear.
ask me the best pate make in St. Thomas or pate make in St. Croix,
Go ahead.
you
Answer.
tell me which one you pick.
I'm going to pick the Pate Make and St. Thomas.
Or can you like Johnny Cake and meat?
He said Johnny Cake.
I
Tommy.
see.
Pass.
Oh,
But
I
yes,
see. Okay. Roast goat or stew goat?
it takes two.
And he's a Rasta man. You
I'm
should
not a- I have
asking he
locks.
that question.
I have locks.
And he's a Rasta.
I'm not a Rasta man.
Do you
Just
know
have-
that you can get vegan pork?
No.
He don't care.
I don't
He
care. I don't
Governor.
eat meat.
He don't eat.
I just have locks. Okay.
That's like
Okay.
your style.
Yeah, that's a hairstyle.
Hey,
Not-
I look so
do not,
confused right now.
do not read anything in it that ain't ought to read. So when you open the buffet and you see me by the pork table, or ask
Absolutely nothing. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I got you.
Okay, okay.
I can walk with that.
Okay.
I get one.
Go ahead.
Bro, soda, or Crucian rum?
Again, there's no comparison. Brown soda is for children, Crucian rum is for adults. And you don't mix brown soda with Crucian rum.
Okay.
You don't do that.
All right.
But you're talking about brown soda in its day.
And it's the
Because the other time when
It wasn't brown soda.
But sorry, Mr. Milligan. But that one brown soda. But when brown soda was brown soda, and you get Damson, pineapple or ice cream,
A lime Ricky.
A lime Ricky. Oh my goodness.
What he meant to ask you was Vita malt or India malt?
Oh, India. No
Thank you.
comparison. No comparison. Now, you know the differences between St. Croix and St. Thomas too is the food versus the jewelry.
Talk to me.
When Crucian people go to St. Thomas, we want to come back in the heyday, right? When with all the duties and all that, we would buy the jewelry and the colognes and the perfumes. When St. Thomians come to St. Croix, they ain't interested in no rum and no jewelry. They were looking for food, and they gonna pack up 3-4 plates of food and get back on the seaplane and carry them home and put them in the freezer.
Well, because we can't cook?
Well,
I saw. See,
Is that what
again-
are you implying?
again, I used to get in trouble when they invite me to be a guest speaker to events in St. Thomas.
Right.
And I used to explain to them that they shouldn't have the dinner before I talk. I can't help but point out the deficiencies in the plate. Because I remember going to a restaurant in St. Thomas as the PBA president, and they was boiling fish and fungi for lunch. And when they put the plate in front of me, you know, I like a politician, I like to talk. And when I look down at my plate, I notice it got grape sauce on the table. And I don't understand. I see the plate leaking, and they start some of Blakey them and things start laughing. And when I realize is when they put the sauce and the fungi and the fish, the fungi so soft it going down, and they pushing the sauce off the plate.
Yeah.
And when you get a ball of fungi in St. Croix with the okra and thing,
Yeah.
and you put that pot spoon in the top and
Yeah,
pour
put
that
that-
onion
it'll
and
stay
butter
there.
sauce in there. That stayed until you eat it. That ain't moving. And ain't no hard, tough fungi.
Oh.
So it is, as I would, me and Rochelle, I would tell Rochelle, I have friends in St. Thomas who in their kitchen, the stove only there to help complete the kitchen. You know, you plug in and connect it.
Rochelle
Most-
Conero?
No, I'm talking about kitchen. I'm talking about
Okay.
Rochelle's kitchen. I said that I was telling Rochelle that I have friends in St. Thomas who their kitchen is beautiful. But you can't turn on the stove and connect to nothing. There's 2 functioning appliances in that kitchen, microwave and ice box.
Okay.
And there you have it. In typical
Well, I got one more.
Go ahead.
I ain't saying that people in St. Thomas can't.
That's what you say,
That's what you're saying. That's exactly what you
I
said.
could name some good cook in St. Thomas.
Don't name it because the camera already catch you saying St. Thomas people
Okay.
can't
My
cook.
sister-in-law, because this is wife, is from St. Thomas, and when we have family function, she
She cook.
She go cook, but
Okay.
she don't go through this, you know.
Yeah.
I don't say, but will you learn this guy? I know you ain't get this on the island of St. Thomas. St. Thomas too busy with business and money. They not got time for kitchen.
Gucci Link Johnny Cake or regular Johnny Cake?
What kind of Johnny cake?
Gucci Link, the one with
That's
two
the one with
slits.
the two
St.
slits,
Thomas
innit?
will do the 2 slits.
No, y'all confuse pancake with Johnny cake. That's the problem in St. Thomas.
We need to stop
That's
the
why you
food
need the
conversation.
slit, because you go get it dough cooked. When you get a Johnny cake, when my mother make a Johnny cake, she even use sour cream in the Johnny cake, you know, and don't use water and lard. She use butter and milk. And when she roll out that Johnny cake and she drop that Johnny cake in the frying pan, it thin. When that Johnny cake reach to the top of the oil, you take it, don't cook right through, you know. And when you bite that Johnny cake, it's nice and fluffy. We in St. Croix, we don't like heavy, big Johnny cake that cook from the middle, and
I like it with a hole in the middle.
I like
we
pita
don't
bread.
we like it nice and
Because
fluffy
when
and
we
light.
go to St. Croix and we break a Johnny cake, it get a lot of air in
You
it.
don't get
Yes,
nothing
it's
in the
supposed
middle.
to, because that's the way you prepare it with the baking powder and stuff like that. It's just to be kind of airy. When you eat one of your Johnny cake, I'm calling it your Johnny cake. Okay, like with my little
Gucci.
belly now.
Gucci.
If I eat half of one, I can eat for 2 weeks. Right? That day ain't gonna move no time soon. That's too heavy.
All right.
Okay, cool.
We're good. All right, cool.
good.
So that's it for the currency bag. And the final segment for Caribbean currency, we have a segment called currency exchange. So currency, we know currency to be money, but currency could be love, currency could be knowledge, currency could be relationships, currency could be time. My most valuable form of currency is knowledge, because I feel like once you know something, you can't unknow it, and that knowledge could take you from situation to better yourself. his form of currency is relationships because he don't need to have money. Sometimes you don't need the knowledge once you have the relationship. So what's your most valuable form of currency?
I have to say, because I'm older than you, I can take the privilege. I have to actually say it's a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have two people in relationship and they ain't got knowledge, a while they're going to hit.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They're going to last because
Yeah.
on both up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just have the knowledge alone and you don't have someone to share it with and someone that you love,
Yes.
you can almost ask yourself, what's the point?
Exactly.
So I have to say that it has to be both.
Mhm.
I've never been materialistic.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be, and most people do that live in America, you should be financially independent,
Yes.
and strong,
Yes.
and have a clear financial foundation, because if you don't, it's going to weaken everything else in your life.
Yeah.
Your ability to express who you are, what you are,
Yeah.
what you want to do. You're going to be inhibited. You got to be careful who you offend and who you ain't
Yeah.
offend.
Yeah.
When you're financially strong and independent, it don't matter. You say what you have to say.
Yeah.
You do what you have to do, and you keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, given your question, that knowledge and good, strong relationships of different sorts are really very important to be well-rounded.
Yes. And pretty much, man,
That's it.
that's it.
So,
Thank you.
That
Thank
was
you very
it.
much for the
That's-
opportunity. And again, I really appreciate
Yes.
spending the time with you. It was
Yes,
really
man.
very informative.
Yes.
I hope I didn't get too informal.
No,
And,
man.
No,
No,
it was
no, no,
great.
no,
It
no,
was
no.
great.
You're in the right place. No.
With DM says, don't give out the tidbits.
Yeah. And I hope you saved a lot for the book
Yeah,
because I
I
want
know
to
it's
read
so
Well,
the
I'm
book
going to
as
tell you
well.
about some of your other politicians, some of them that make some of the craziest deals for
Oh
votes.
yeah, so we
yes, sir.
definitely,
So yeah, we got to get our book.
definitely
Drop
can't
it.
wait for the book.
It's going to be a while.
It will
but,
be a while?
yeah. Well, because I'm going to put in the foreword of the book that I am not changing the names to protect the guilty.
Right.
I'm going to call people names.
Name.
Right.
And then you could sue me, and you and my estate lawyer could figure that out.
You know when you get money, the estate lawyer.
Estate lawyer.
Well, the reason I'm saying that
Guy, he
is
gonna be
because
gone.
I'm getting ready to enter the last chapter of my life.
Yeah,
So
right.
all I have to do is like Donald Trump, just delay you.
Delay.
And when I gone, that's your problem. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, we're humble and very appreciative for you to take the time out of your day. You know, as your phone been ringing the whole time, you're a very needed and wanted man still, even though you're not in the governorship. I'm a big fan of yours. I know
Thank
Kyle's
you.
a
Thank you
big
for
fan
your
of yours
support.
as well.
Definitely.
And we just respect the way that you handle things. We come from parents and a background where, you know,
You see
our
many
mo-
of the things I'm speaking about in
Yeah.
your life.
Yes.
right, and
Yes.
then our mothers led with strength.
And my
Yes.
mother
You
is
know
an
what I mean?
avid supporter. She
Right.
said to
Thank
tell
you.
you hello. She said she's
Right.
so proud of me and
Right.
all like
Thank
this,
you.
but she's an avid supporter.
Yeah.
You can't
Thank
do no
her.
wrong in a woman.
Yeah, they were no nonsense. They led
Yeah.
with strength. They spoke straight. They didn't
Mhm.
beat around the bush. So
Yes.
we learn to accept things as they're
How they
said
are.
and not getting our feelings.
Feelings,
And it is what it is. My mother tell you she live in her house at 7:00. When you get out in a driver at 7:00, Kagan,
Okay,
you go
yeah.
find where Alita can cry from Nara Hill.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
so
you're going to school.
and you're going to school
Yeah,
too.
then you
You
come
don't
back
stay
home.
home.
That's right.
Right.
And
You know what I
you
mean? So
home.
we come from that. So we
Yeah.
appreciated your style and then even your humbleness to even accept where you could have did things differently. And we're just really grateful.
And that's rare. I want to touch on that. That's
Right.
rare in politicians.
Right.
Accountability. So for you to come here and even just mention that, that's huge.
But it's
Yeah.
reality. It's part of living.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
I again, don't compare me to the Almighty.
Yeah.
I ain't trying to get
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not trying to be that.
Yes.
But I recognize my life is a continuing learning process,
Yes.
even for me.
Yes.
And I will make mistakes even
Yes.
in the future.
Yes.
But the reality isn't that you're going to make mistakes. The question is, are you smart enough to learn, from them?
Right.
And if
Exactly.
you are, then it makes you a better person.
Exactly.
That's
Right.
what we all strive to be.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I'm glad my mom sent me to St. Croix at an early age. I'm glad I was raised in St.
Yeah,
Croix.
yeah.
I'm really glad. I remember, and I want to go back, but I remember when the Daily News didn't know what a seti fowl was.
Uh-huh.
And they thought I was being disrespectful and calling a female out of their name
yeah.
in such a disrespectful way.
Yeah.
And I had to explain to them when I had a press conference when they asked me about that. After Dr. Andus gave them the historical perspective of what that was,
Mm-hmm.
I had to explain to them, I was born in, don't get upset with me, I was born in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And if you go to Brooklyn and talk to any native in Brooklyn, none of them sound like me.
Yeah.
I said, and the reason I sound this way is because that's why it teach me in St. Croix.
Yeah.
That's how I raised me.
Me,
So
yeah.
don't get upset with me.
Yeah. As a product of the
this-
soil.
This is what you imparted on me.
Yeah.
And to come out of that farm and the AME church and public school, and without having an associate's degree or having a bachelor's degree, walk out of Harvard with a real active worked for masters in public administration
That's crazy.
is not so much a testament to me, it's a testament to the people of the Virgin Islands
Yes.
and the kind of value
Yes.
that you create there
Yes.
and the type of things you do in raising families and children there.
Yes.
Because a lot of people can't do that. I didn't know it until they announced it at my graduation that I was the third person since 1636 that received a master's degree, not having an associate's or a bachelor's degree from Harvard University.
Wow.
So that's not a testament so much to me, it's a testament to the people of the Virgin Islands. And then I went back to the Virgin Islands and they no pay he no mind. Harvard give he that just so he could come here to campaign for government. I mean, it's like, you know, you got people on the radio and say those kinds of things. And what do? You just
Right.
shrug your shoulders and say,
Right.
God bless them.
God bless them.
Yeah.
Well, God bless
Thank
them.
you so much for the time. It was I really enjoyed this.
Yes.
Make sure when you do the edit and all of that and you have the final product, please make sure I get the link.
Of course.
We're gonna get a
Because
link.
my brothers
You have an Instagram, by the way?
no, I don't. I have, but I've never used it.
Okay.
I've only
Facebook?
done
Have a Facebook?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm big on Facebook.
Okay.
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I
Facebook
haven't
will
done
be
much on it.
we'll love to like tag you in the clips that we put
Yeah,
out
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
we'll send you the final
send you the
copy so you
final
can see it.
Yeah, I'd like to share that.
Right.
And
Yeah. Okay, so
okay.
again, guys, it was a pleasure having the former Governor Honorable Kenneth Mapp here, Caribbean Currency. Please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe. And we're going to see you guys on the next episode of Caribbean Currency. Peace.
Just need a big bag, I'ma get it so fast, I'm so fast. And when I get that money, I'ma make that last. Caribbean currency, we make that money last. We make it last. I just need a